The Forgotten Path. Ethan had always been drawn to the unexplained, the mysterious corners of the world where legend and reality blurred. So, when he heard about the ancient, cursed forest path known only as the Forgotten Path, he knew he had to explore it. For this journey, he hired Aria, a local guide with eyes like deep forest pools and a past shrouded in whispers. The path was said to be alive, trapping those who dared to tread upon it. Ethan, armed with his insatiable curiosity, and Aria, with her unspoken secrets, stepped into the dense forest. The trees loomed like silent giants, their branches intertwining above, casting a perpetual twilight. As they ventured deeper, the air grew colder, and the forest seemed to close in around them. Ethan felt as if unseen eyes were watching their every move. Aria, usually so composed, had a tightness around her eyes, a silent acknowledgement of the forest's eerie grip. Their first discovery was a series of ancient runes carved into the trees. Ethan traced his fingers over the symbols, feeling a shiver run down his spine. Aria watched him, her expression unreadable. "These are warnings," she said softly, "from a time long forgotten, from those who respected the forest's power." The path beneath them seemed to shift and change. What was once a straight trail now twisted and turned, leading them in circles. Ethan's logical mind struggled to make sense of it. Time itself seemed distorted, the sun hanging motionless in the sky. It was then that Aria shared her truth. She was not just a guide, she was the last protector of the path's secrets, a guardian of a pact made generations ago to keep the curious away. Ethan listened, his heart pounding in his chest. He had thought he was the hunter of mysteries, but he was actually the prey, lured by his own reckless desire for the unknown. As night fell, they encountered the ghostly procession. Spectral figures, faces twisted in eternal sorrow, wandered the path. They were the trapped souls of those who had ignored the warnings, forever bound to the path they had so carelessly tread. Ethan's courage faltered. The stories were true. The path was alive, feeding on the curiosity and arrogance of those like him. He turned to Aria, his guide, his protector, and saw the weight of centuries in her eyes. She had tried to warn him, to save him from the fate of the others. They hurried back, the path now seemingly relenting, releasing them from its grasp. As they emerged from the forest, the first light of dawn touched the horizon. The world outside seemed brighter, more real than the shadowy realm they had left behind. Ethan looked back at the forest, at the path that had almost claimed him. He realized then the danger of disturbing what should be left alone and the power the past held over the present. The Forgotten Path was a reminder, a guardian of secrets not meant for mortal eyes. Aria's voice, now a mere whisper, lingered in his ears. "Remember, some paths are not meant to be found." And with that, she vanished, as if she were just another ghost of the forest, leaving Ethan with a story he would never dare tell. The path had released him, but the haunting whispers of the forest would follow him forever, a reminder of the price of his curiosity. Echoes in the canyon. Leo and Mia, a young couple with a thirst for adventure, set out to explore a deep, winding canyon known for its strange and unexplained echoes. The canyon, a jagged scar in the Earth's surface, had long been the subject of local legends and tales of mystery. Eager to experience its mysteries firsthand, Leo and Mia packed their gear and descended into the canyon's depths. As they journeyed deeper, the walls of the canyon rose high above them, the sky reduced to a narrow strip of blue. The air was still, the silence broken only by the sound of their footsteps and the occasional bird call echoing off the canyon walls. It was an otherworldly place, both beautiful and unsettling. They soon realized that the canyon's echoes had a peculiar quality. Voices and sounds seemed to come from all directions, disorienting and confusing them. Mia called out, her voice bouncing back in a strange, distorted whisper. Leo laughed at first, but as the echoes continued to play tricks on their minds, the amusement turned to unease. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows on the canyon floor, they realized they were lost. The paths they thought they were following had vanished, and the echoes grew louder and more insistent. It was as if the canyon itself was speaking to them, whispering secrets in a language they couldn't understand. In their search for a way out, they stumbled upon an old hermit living in a makeshift dwelling near a bend in the canyon. The hermit, a man with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of years and secrets, offered them shelter for the night. His home was an eerie place, filled with odd trinkets and ancient artifacts. The walls were lined with drawings of the canyon and what looked like maps of hidden caves and passageways. That night, as they slept in the hermit's dwelling, the echoes continued to haunt them. In their dreams, they heard voices calling out to them, revealing their deepest fears and insecurities. Leo dreamt of being trapped, unable to escape, while Mia was tormented by visions of losing her way back to the life she knew. The next day, guided by the hermit, they ventured further into the canyon. The old man spoke little but seemed to know the paths intimately, leading them through narrow passageways and along treacherous ledges. As they traveled, the echoes grew stronger, more coherent. They heard snippets of conversations, pleas for help, and cries of despair, echoes of those who had once walked these paths. Finally, they arrived at a hidden cave. The hermit revealed that this was the heart of the canyon, the source of its mysterious echoes. Inside, the cave was filled with crystals that seemed to glow with an inner light. The air vibrated with the echoes of 1,000 voices. In the cave, the hermit shared his story. He was the guardian of the canyon, a keeper of its secrets. Long ago, he had come here, like them, seeking adventure. But the canyon had a way of revealing one's true self, and he had been unable to leave, forever bound to its echoing walls. Leo and Mia listened, their minds reeling from the revelation. The hermit warned them that the canyon could trap them as well, just as it had trapped him and many others before. The echoes were not just sounds but memories, remnants of past choices and lives once lived. Determined not to meet the same fate, Leo and Mia thanked the hermit and made their way back, guided by the sound of their own voices echoing through the canyon. The journey back was a blur, their hearts racing with a mix of fear and determination. As they emerged from the canyon, the world outside seemed brighter, more real. They looked back at the canyon, its depths still echoing with the voices of the past. They realized that the line between reality and illusion was thin, and the echoes they had heard were not just those of the canyon, but of their own pasts and fears. Leo and Mia left the canyon behind, but its echoes lingered in their minds, a haunting reminder of their journey and the mysteries that lay hidden in the depths of the earth. They knew they would never be the same, forever changed by the echoes in the canyon. Midnight at mile marker 88. Sam, a journalist known for his skepticism, had always been fascinated by the unexplained. So, when he heard about the mysteries surrounding mile marker 88, a notorious stretch of highway where strange occurrences were reported, he was naturally intrigued. The highway was a desolate ribbon of asphalt, cutting through a barren landscape. Mile marker 88, in particular, was said to be the epicenter of unexplainable phenomena. Armed with his recorder and a healthy dose of skepticism, Sam set out to investigate. He started by interviewing the locals, each of whom had a tale more unnerving than the last. There were stories of ghostly apparitions, time distortions, and travelers who encountered the mile marker only to vanish without a trace. Sam listened, his journalistic instincts telling him there was a logical explanation for everything he was hearing. As night fell, Sam decided to drive the stretch of highway himself. The idea was to cross mile marker 88 at midnight, documenting his experience. The night was dark, the only light coming from his car's headlights and the faint glow of the moon. The road ahead seemed to stretch endlessly. As he approached mile marker 88, a sense of unease crept over him. He remembered the stories he had been told earlier in the day, but he pushed those thoughts away. It was just a road, he told himself, nothing more. But as his car passed the mile marker, something shifted. The air grew colder, and a dense fog rolled in from nowhere, enveloping his car. Sam slowed down, straining to see through the fog. His watch showed it was midnight, but as he glanced back at the road, the mile marker was still there, right beside him. Confused, he realized he was driving in a loop, passing the same spot again and again. Panic set in. Sam tried to turn the car around, but no matter which direction he went, mile marker 88 remained stubbornly in his path. The fog grew thicker, and eerie shapes seemed to move within it. He could hear faint whispers, voices that seemed both far away and uncomfortably close. Then he saw it, a ghostly apparition standing in the middle of the road. Sam slammed on the brakes, his heart pounding in his chest. The figure was a man, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, his face expressionless and pale. Sam's mind raced. Was this a hallucination? A trick of the light? The figure pointed towards the mile marker, and then vanished. Sam sat there, frozen, trying to process what he had just seen. His skepticism battled with the reality of his experience. The stories he had dismissed earlier now echoed in his mind with chilling clarity. Determined to break free from the loop, Sam drove forward, passing the mile marker again. But this time, he noticed something different. There was a small, almost hidden path beside the road. On impulse, he turned onto it. The path led him away from the highway and the fog began to clear. As dawn broke, Sam found himself on a different part of the highway, the sun casting long shadows across the road. He looked back, but the path he had taken was gone, as if it had never been there. Mile marker 88 was nowhere in sight. Sam returned to the locals, his skepticism replaced by a deep sense of unease. He shared his experience, and an old man, who had listened quietly to Sam's story, spoke up. He explained that mile marker 88 was a place where the boundaries of reality were thin, where the past and present intertwined. The man revealed that many years ago, a traveler had vanished at mile marker 88, never to be seen again. The apparition Sam had seen was that traveler, trapped in an eternal loop, a victim of the strange forces at play around the mile marker. Sam left the town with a story he knew would be hard to believe. He had gone in search of a myth and had found a reality far more terrifying. The experience at mile marker 88 had changed him, blurring the lines between his skepticism and belief. As he drove away, he glanced at his rearview mirror one last time, half expecting to see the mile marker appear. But there was nothing, just the open road stretching out before him. Yet, the eerie sensation of being watched, of being part of something beyond understanding, lingered with him, a haunting reminder of that surreal night at mile marker 88. The in-between worlds nestled at a lonely crossroads. The old inn looked like any other weary traveler's refuge. Its walls, weathered by time, held secrets beyond the understanding of the ordinary world. Nora, the innkeeper, was a woman of few words, her eyes always seeming to look beyond the present. It was a place that attracted the curious and the lost, those drawn by the inn's mysterious reputation. Rumors had it that the inn was a gateway to other realities, a junction where parallel worlds converged. The guests who stayed there often spoke of strange experiences, but none as bizarre as what happened one fateful night. That night, a group of travelers, each from a different walk of life, found themselves at the inn. There was a businessman seeking a shortcut, a couple on a romantic getaway, and a young woman searching for adventure. They were unaware that their stay at the inn would be anything but ordinary. As the night deepened, the air within the inn grew thick with an unspoken anticipation. The guests retired to their rooms, unaware that the inn was already weaving its otherworldly magic around them. In the middle of the night, the businessman awoke to find his room transformed. The walls pulsated with a strange energy, and the window looked out not onto the quiet crossroads but onto a bustling, alien cityscape with towering structures defying the laws of physics. Disoriented, he tried to leave his room, only to find that the door led back into the same room over and over again. Meanwhile, the couple found themselves in an endless forest, their cozy room replaced by an ancient woodland bathed in an eerie, ethereal light. They heard whispers in the wind, voices that seemed to call out to them from the shadows. The deeper they ventured, the more they felt the forest closing in on them as if it were alive. The young woman, filled with a sense of adventure, discovered her room had turned into a vast, desolate landscape. She walked through it, fascinated and terrified at the same time, as the ground beneath her shifted and changed, leading her further into the unknown. As dawn approached, the inn began to settle back into its usual form. The rooms returned to their normal appearance, but the guests were nowhere to be found. Nora, the innkeeper, moved through the inn with a knowing calmness. She checked each room, her expression unreadable. The businessman was found in a trance-like state, staring out of his window at the now normal crossroads. The couple was discovered huddled together in their room, whispering about the forest and the voices that still echoed in their minds. The young woman was curled up in a corner, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and wonder. It was then that Nora gathered the guests, her eyes holding a depth of knowledge that seemed ancient. She explained that the inn was more than a mere resting place for travelers. It was a nexus of realities, a place where the boundaries between worlds were thin. The guests had experienced what few others could imagine, a glimpse into the infinite possibilities of existence. But such knowledge came at a price. The guests realized they could never see the world in the same way again. Their experiences had changed them, opened their eyes to the vast, unknown depths of reality. The businessman, the couple, and the young woman left the inn as the sun rose, each carrying with them the memories of that night. Nora watched them go, her expression a mix of sadness and relief. She knew the inn would call to others, drawing in those who sought to explore its mysteries. But she also knew that not all who wandered through its doors were ready for the truths they might uncover. The inn, seemingly normal yet otherworldly, stood at the crossroads, waiting for the next traveler to step into its realm. Inside, the mysterious locked room remained closed, holding secrets that were yet to be revealed, and Nora, the guardian of this threshold between worlds, continued her silent vigil. Whispers of the lost village. Deep in a dense forest lay the ruins of an abandoned village, its story lost to time. A group of young documentary filmmakers, driven by curiosity and the thrill of uncovering forgotten tales, set out to explore this mysterious place. Their goal was to unveil the reasons behind the village's sudden abandonment many decades ago. As they ventured into the forest, a heavy sense of unease settled over them. The trees seemed to close in, and a silence hung in the air, broken only by their footsteps. Eventually, they stumbled upon the village, a collection of crumbling structures being slowly reclaimed by nature. Their exploration began in earnest. They examined dilapidated houses, their walls telling stories of lives abruptly left behind. Among the ruins, they found strange symbols and old, worn-out ritualistic items, hinting at practices long forgotten. The air was thick with the weight of untold stories, and a sense of dread grew with every step they took. As night fell, the forest around the village came alive with unsettling sounds. Whispering voices echoed through the trees, and shadows moved in the corners of their eyes. The filmmakers, once eager and excited, now felt the oppressive atmosphere of the village weighing down on them. One night, around their campfire, an old man emerged from the shadows of the forest. He claimed to be a former villager, one of the few who had escaped the curse that befell the village. His eyes, clouded with age and fear, held a haunting depth as he recounted his tale. The old man spoke of a time when the village was vibrant and full of life. But the villagers, he said, had delved into forbidden rituals, seeking to control forces they did not understand. One night, during a particularly dark ceremony, something went terribly wrong. An ancient curse was unleashed, dooming the village and its inhabitants. The filmmakers listened, captivated and horrified. The old man told them of ghostly apparitions that began to haunt the village, of neighbors vanishing into thin air, and of a darkness that enveloped the hearts of those who remained. In the end, he whispered, the village was left to the ghosts, and the survivors fled, never to speak of it again. The group, now deeply unsettled, decided to leave at first light. But the village, and whatever spirits remained, were not done with them. That night, they experienced the hauntings firsthand. Ethereal figures appeared in the darkness, their ghostly whispers filling the air. The remnants of the cursed ritual seemed to come alive, and the forest itself appeared to turn against them. In their panic, they became separated, each member of the group facing their own nightmarish experiences. One filmmaker saw visions of the villagers' last moments, another heard the cries of the lost echoing through the trees, and another felt unseen hands grasping at them in the darkness. Dawn brought a tense reunion. The group, shaken and terrified, quickly gathered their equipment. As they hurried out of the village, the old man's words echoed in their minds, the village remembers. It never forgets those who tread its paths. As they emerged from the forest, the oppressive feeling lifted, but the experience had changed them. They had gone in search of a forgotten story, only to find themselves part of it. The documentary they set out to make was left unfinished, the footage locked away, too disturbing to be shared. The ruins of the village remained hidden in the dense forest, its whispers echoing among the trees. The story of the lost village became yet another forgotten tale, its truth known only to those who had experienced the horrors firsthand. The old man's final warning stayed with them. Some truths, once uncovered, can never be buried again. The bridge to nowhere. In the heart of a remote, dense forest lay an ancient bridge, known to the locals as the Bridge to Nowhere. Legend had it that the bridge was a gateway to other dimensions, a crossing point into realms unknown. Alex, a young and daring blogger known for exploring the unexplained, was drawn to the mystery of the bridge. He had heard the stories, travelers who crossed the bridge and were never seen again, bizarre creatures sighted in the vicinity, and a mysterious guardian who watched over the bridge. One foggy morning, Alex set out with his camera and a backpack, determined to uncover the truth behind the legend. As he approached the bridge, a figure emerged from the mist, a tall, cloaked person, their face hidden in the shadows of a hood. This was the guardian of the bridge, a silent sentinel standing between the known world and the mysteries that lay beyond. Ignoring the guardian's warning gestures, Alex stepped onto the bridge. The wood creaked under his feet, and the fog seemed to grow denser with each step. He felt a strange sensation, as if he was walking into another world. When he reached the middle of the bridge, the air around him shimmered, and he found himself in a completely different landscape. The world he entered was surreal and otherworldly. The sky was a kaleidoscope of colors, and the ground beneath him was a mosaic of different terrains. One moment grassy plains, the next moment a barren desert. Strange creatures roamed this land, some resembling animals from Earth, others like nothing he had ever seen. Alex's initial excitement turned to fear as he realized he was lost in this alien world. The bridge had vanished, and with it, his way back home. He wandered through the bizarre landscape, encountering creatures that defied explanation, some benign, others terrifying. As night fell in this strange world, Alex found himself being pursued by a pack of shadowy creatures. Their eyes glowed in the darkness, and they moved with a predatory grace. In his desperation, Alex ran, stumbling through the unfamiliar terrain. Just when he thought he was lost, the Guardian appeared, warding off the creatures with a wave of their hand. The Guardian, speaking for the first time, revealed their true purpose. They were not just a keeper of the bridge, but a protector of the worlds it connected. The bridge was a fragile boundary between realities, and those who crossed it without understanding risked unleashing chaos across the dimensions. The Guardian explained that Alex's presence had disturbed the balance, attracting the attention of beings that sought to exploit the weakened barrier between worlds. The only way to restore the balance and return Alex to his world was to complete a challenge, a puzzle that required understanding the nature of the bridge and the worlds it connected. Alex, with guidance from the Guardian, embarked on a journey across the surreal landscape, deciphering clues and overcoming challenges that tested his courage and wit. He encountered more of the bizarre creatures, some of which helped him in his quest, while others sought to hinder him. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Alex solved the puzzle. The solution lay in acknowledging the interconnectedness of all worlds and the responsibility that came with traversing them. As he uttered the words that completed the puzzle, the bridge reappeared, its archway glowing with a radiant light. With a heavy heart but a newfound respect for the mysteries of the universe, Alex crossed the bridge back to his own world. The Guardian nodded in approval, their purpose fulfilled. As the bridge faded into the mist, so did the Guardian, their duty to protect the balance remaining eternal. Alex returned home, forever changed by his experience. He shared his story on his blog, not as a tale of adventure, but as a warning of the price of venturing too far into the unknown. The bridge to nowhere remained a legend, a reminder of the allure of the unexplored and the dangers that lay in uncovering the mysteries of the universe. The Haunting of Carriage 13. Emily, a young and adventurous traveler, had always been fascinated by the supernatural. When she heard tales of an old train with a haunted carriage, her curiosity was piqued. According to local lore, Carriage 13 of the train was home to unexplained phenomena and ghostly apparitions. Determined to experience this for herself, Emily boarded the train, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. The train was a relic from a bygone era, its carriages exuding an old-world charm. As Emily walked through the train, she felt a chill run down her spine. The passengers seemed oblivious to the eerie atmosphere, but Emily could feel something was off. She found Carriage 13 at the end of the train, its doors slightly ajar. Stepping inside, she was hit by a wave of cold air. The carriage was empty, the seats covered in a thick layer of dust. It was as if time had stood still in Carriage 13. Emily sat down, her senses heightened. As the train chugged along, she heard faint whispers, the sound of hushed conversations long past. Shadows flickered in the corners of her eyes, and she felt as though she was being watched. That night, as the train traveled through a moonlit landscape, the haunting of Carriage 13 began in earnest. The temperature dropped, and Emily saw her breath in the air. The whispers grew louder, and she could now make out words, phrases filled with sorrow and longing. Suddenly, a ghostly apparition appeared across from her. It was a woman, her face etched with grief. Emily watched, frozen in fear, as the spectral woman reached out to her, mouthing silent words. The lights flickered, and then the apparition vanished, leaving Emily alone once again. The next morning, Emily sought out the old conductor of the train. He was a man with sad, knowing eyes, and he listened intently as Emily recounted her experience. With a heavy heart, he revealed the tragic history of Carriage 13. Many years ago, the conductor explained, there had been an accident on the train. Carriage 13 had been the site of a terrible tragedy, resulting in the loss of several lives. Among the lost was a young woman, the conductor's own daughter. Her grief and the grief of the others had left an indelible mark on the carriage, trapping their spirits in a perpetual loop of their final moments. Determined to help, Emily suggested conducting a séance in Carriage 13. That night, with the help of the conductor, she set out to contact the spirits. The train was eerily quiet as they began the séance, a single candle flickering between them. As they reached out to the spirits, the air in the carriage grew thick with the presence of the unseen. The candle's flame danced wildly, and the whispers returned, now more coherent. Emily and the conductor heard the voices of the lost, each sharing their story, their unfinished business keeping them tethered to the mortal world. The spectral woman appeared again, her expression one of deep sadness. Through the séance, she communicated her story to Emily and the conductor. She spoke of her life, her dreams, and the tragic accident that had cut it all short. The conductor, tears streaming down his face, spoke to his daughter, expressing his love and his deep regret for not being there to protect her. As the séance concluded, a sense of peace filled Carriage 13. The spirits, having had their stories heard, began to fade away, their whispers turning to sighs of relief. The spectral woman, the conductor's daughter, gave a final, tearful smile before disappearing into the ether. The haunting of Carriage 13 came to an end that night. The spirits had moved on, their grief finally resolved. Emily left the train the next morning, her heart heavy yet hopeful. She had come seeking ghosts, and had instead found closure and healing. The old train continued its journeys, but Carriage 13 was no longer feared. It became a place of remembrance, a tribute to the lives that had been lost and the love that never died. Emily would never forget her journey on the train and the night she helped bridge the gap between the living and the dead. The cursed expedition in the heart of a dense, uncharted jungle known for making explorers vanish without a trace. Dr. Helena, a renowned and ambitious archaeologist, led her team of diverse experts on a quest to uncover a lost civilization. Rumors of a hidden temple filled with ancient artifacts had lured them deep into the jungle's embrace. The team, equipped with the latest technology and years of experience, felt confident in their mission. However, as they ventured deeper into the jungle, a sense of unease began to grow among them. The air was thick with the weight of untold secrets, and strange, unsettling sounds echoed through the trees. Their first discovery was a series of ancient artifacts, intricately carved and eerily well preserved. Dr. Helena's excitement was palpable as she examined them, but her excitement turned to horror when they realized that the artifacts were cursed. One by one, the team members began to experience strange occurrences, objects moving on their own, ghostly whispers in the dead of night, and unsettling visions. The jungle seemed to come alive around them, with the trees whispering ancient chants and the animals watching with knowing eyes. The team pressed on, driven by Dr. Helena's determination. But with each step, the curse grew stronger. One night, a team member was found speaking in an unknown language, his eyes glazed over as if possessed by an unseen force. The team was terrified, realizing that they had disturbed something ancient and malevolent. Dr. Helena, though shaken, insisted they continue, driven by her ambition to make the discovery of a lifetime. As they approached the heart of the jungle, they stumbled upon the remains of a long-lost tribe. The ruins were overgrown with vegetation, but the outlines of a grand temple were still visible. Dr. Helena's eyes lit up with triumph, but her triumph was short-lived. Guarding the temple were spectral figures, the spirits of the tribe's ancient guardians. They were ethereal and terrifying, their eyes burning with a silent fury. The team realized that they were not welcome, that the temple and its secrets were meant to remain hidden from the outside world. The Guardians attacked, their ghostly forms passing through the team's weapons as if they were made of air. The team was forced to retreat, but the Guardians pursued them, relentless in their defense of the sacred site. In the chaos, Dr. Helena was separated from her team. She found herself alone in the temple, facing the wrath of the ancient spirits. Her ambition had led her here, but now she faced the consequences of her hubris. In the temple's inner chamber, she came face to face with the source of the curse, a demonic entity bound to the temple for centuries. It was a terrifying creature, its form constantly shifting and changing. Dr. Helena realized that the entity was the protector of the temple's secrets, and that it would not let her leave alive. With her knowledge of ancient rituals and languages, Dr. Helena attempted to communicate with the entity. She offered apologies and promises to leave the secrets of the temple undisturbed. The entity, after centuries of anger and solitude, listened to her pleas. A climactic battle of wills ensued, with Dr. Helena using all her knowledge and strength to convince the entity to release her and her team. The entity, moved by her genuine remorse and respect for the ancient powers, agreed to let them go, but not without a warning. The secrets of the temple were not meant for the outside world, and the price for disturbing them was high. Dr. Helena emerged from the temple, exhausted and humbled. She found her team waiting for her, relieved to see her alive. They left the jungle, the sounds of the ancient chants still echoing in their ears. The cursed expedition was over, but its impact lingered. Dr. Helena and her team returned home, their minds and hearts forever changed by their experience. They had sought a lost civilization but found a reminder of the dangers of disturbing what should remain hidden. The secrets of the temple remained undisturbed, protected by the ancient guardians and the memory of the expedition's encounter with the unknown. Nightfall at North Pass. Tara, a young and determined hiker with a passion for debunking myths, set her sights on the infamous North Pass. The pass, nestled in a remote mountain range, was notorious for mysterious disappearances and chilling legends. Locals spoke of a malevolent spirit that haunted the pass, preying on unwary travelers as night fell. Tara, skeptical and driven, was determined to prove these stories wrong. As she began her hike, the sun was high in the sky, casting long shadows between the dense trees that lined the path. The air was cool and crisp, typical of the mountain's high altitude. Tara felt a thrill of excitement. She loved the challenge and solitude of hiking. The trail was rugged, winding its way up the steep slopes. As Tara ascended, she noticed odd natural phenomena that she couldn't quite explain. Trees in certain areas were twisted unnaturally, and there were patches where no snow lay, despite the cold. She shrugged these off as quirks of the mountain's ecosystem. As evening approached, the atmosphere began to change. The wind picked up, howling through the trees and bringing with it a biting chill. Tara realized she needed to set up camp soon. She found a clearing and pitched her tent, just as the first flurries of snow began to fall. Night fell quickly, and with it came an oppressive sense of isolation. Tara tried to shake off the feeling, reminding herself that the legends were just stories. But as the night deepened, so did her unease. Strange noises echoed through the pass, whispers carried by the wind, and distant, indistinct wails. Suddenly, a blizzard hit, fierce and unrelenting. Tara huddled in her tent, listening to the wind scream like a banshee. It felt as though the mountain itself was alive and angry. Amidst the howling wind, she heard another sound, a faint, haunting melody like a lullaby. In the morning, Tara emerged from her tent to a world blanketed in white. The snowstorm had passed, but the landscape was now unfamiliar, disorienting. She tried to find her way back, but the landmarks she had noted were buried under the snow. Lost and growing more frightened, Tara pressed on, hoping to find a way out of the pass. It was then she stumbled upon a cabin, half buried in snow, smoke curling from its chimney. Relief flooded through her. She wasn't alone. The cabin's inhabitant was an old man, with eyes that held a depth of sadness. He welcomed her in, offering warmth and shelter. As they sat by the fire, the man shared his story. He was the last of his family, descendants of the original settlers of the pass. The legends, he said, were true. His ancestors had angered a spirit of the mountain, and it had cursed them. The disappearances, the strange phenomena, it was all the work of the spirit, seeking revenge. Tara listened, her skepticism waning. She couldn't deny the eerie events she had experienced. The old man warned her that the spirit was most powerful at night and that she should leave the pass before dusk. Determined to escape, Tara thanked the man and set out. But the mountain seemed to conspire against her. Landmarks shifted, paths led in circles, and the haunting melody followed her. As night approached, fear gripped her heart. She realized she was being drawn deeper into the spirit's domain. In the dim light of twilight, the spirit appeared. It was a ghostly figure, its form shifting and ethereal. Tara felt a chill that went beyond the cold of the mountain. The spirit spoke, its voice like the wind through dead leaves. It told her of the pain and betrayal it had suffered at the hands of the settlers, of its unending grief and rage. Tara, facing the spirit, understood the thin line between reality and superstition. She felt a profound sorrow for the spirit, trapped in its cycle of vengeance. In a moment of desperation, she offered an apology on behalf of the settlers, acknowledging the spirit's pain. To her surprise, the spirit's anger seemed to lessen. The mountain's oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly, as if a weight had been lifted. The spirit faded away, its melody lingering in the air. Tara found her way out of the past that night, guided by the light of the stars. She returned to civilization, forever changed by her experience. The legends of North Pass were more than just stories. They were the echoes of a deep, unresolved sorrow. The old man at the cabin remained a mystery. Was he just a reclusive mountain dweller, or something more? Tara often wondered if he was another aspect of the mountain's haunting, a guardian of its tragic history. Tara never returned to North Pass, but she shared her story, a tale of a hiker's confrontation with the unknown and the acknowledgement of ancient grief. The pass remained a place of mystery, a reminder of the fragile boundary between the known world and the realms of spirits and legends. The lighthouse of silent screams on a rugged, desolate coastline stood an abandoned lighthouse, its once bright beacon now dark against the gray sky. Daniel, a young photographer with a keen interest in the paranormal, had always been drawn to places shrouded in mystery and lore. The lighthouse, known as the Lighthouse of Silent Screams, was rumored to be haunted by the spirits of those who had perished there in a tragic past. Equipped with his camera and a sense of adventurous curiosity, Daniel made his way to the lighthouse during a brooding, overcast day. The sea churned violently, waves crashing against the cliffs with a relentless force. The lighthouse loomed above, its presence both majestic and ominous. As Daniel entered the lighthouse, a heavy silence enveloped him. The air was thick with the scent of salt and decay. He began to explore, his camera clicking away as he captured the eerie beauty of the place. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and the spiral staircase creaked under his weight as he ascended. In the lantern room at the top, Daniel found an old journal, its pages yellowed with age. It belonged to the lighthouse keeper who had witnessed the tragic events that led to the lighthouse's haunting. The journal spoke of a terrible storm, a shipwreck, and the desperate cries of the sailors who drowned, their voices forever silenced by the raging sea. As Daniel read, the wind outside grew stronger, howling like the screams of the lost sailors. He felt a chill run down his spine, a sense of unease creeping over him. But his fascination pushed him further, compelling him to uncover more of the lighthouse's secrets. Descending to the lower levels, he discovered a hidden underground chamber. The room was cold and damp, the walls echoing with the faint, sorrowful whispers of the past. Daniel's camera flashed, capturing the shadows that danced across the stone. Suddenly, the lighthouse trembled as a powerful storm hit the coast. Thunder roared, lightning illuminating the sky in flashes of white. Daniel realized he was trapped inside the lighthouse, cut off from the outside world by the tempest. As the storm raged on, Daniel began to see spectral figures, translucent apparitions of the drowned sailors, their faces twisted in anguish. They moved through the lighthouse, their silent screams a haunting reminder of their untimely deaths. Daniel, both terrified and mesmerized, continued to photograph these ghostly visions, documenting their tormented existence. The spirits grew more agitated, their movements frenzied as the storm reached its peak. Daniel felt their anger and sorrow, a palpable force that threatened to overwhelm him. He knew he had disturbed something sacred, a space where the boundary between the living and the dead was blurred. In the climax of the storm, the old lighthouse keeper's spirit appeared. He was a forlorn figure, his eyes filled with regret and despair. He spoke to Daniel, his voice a mere whisper over the roar of the storm. He revealed the truth, that he had been unable to save the sailors, his failure condemning him to haunt the lighthouse in eternal guilt. The keeper warned Daniel that his presence had awakened the spirit's wrath, that he must leave before it was too late. But the way out was blocked, the storm too fierce. Daniel was trapped, his only hope to appease the vengeful spirits. In a desperate bid for redemption, Daniel offered his photographs to the spirits, a tribute to their memory. He promised to share their story, to ensure that their tragedy would not be forgotten. As the storm subsided, the spirits' anger seemed to dissipate. The ghostly sailors faded away, their silent screams quieting into the whispers of the wind. The lighthouse keeper gave Daniel a nod of gratitude before vanishing into the breaking dawn. Daniel emerged from the lighthouse at daybreak, the storm having passed. The sea was calm, its fury spent. He left with a profound sense of humility and respect for the past, his photographs a testament to the haunting beauty and sorrow of the Lighthouse of Silent Screams. The lighthouse stood once more in solitude, its story captured through Daniel's lens. He shared the tale of the haunted lighthouse, a reminder of the echo of past tragedies and the consequences of invading sacred spaces. The lighthouse, with its haunting soundscapes and spectral guardians, remained a place of melancholic beauty, its secrets preserved in the silence of its screams. The haunting of the abandoned station. The moon cast a ghostly glow over the old railway station, its once busy platforms now silent and deserted. Sarah, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and fear, stepped cautiously onto the cracked pavement. Beside her, Mike, a seasoned local guide with stories as deep as the wrinkles on his face, led the way. "This place has been abandoned for years," Sarah whispered, her voice barely rising above the eerie stillness. She fumbled with her camera, eager to document every shadow and whisper of the night. As they ventured deeper, the station seemed to awaken. The air grew colder, and the faint sound of a distant train whistle sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Mike stopped suddenly, his eyes fixed on the walls. "Look," he said, pointing to the graffiti that adorned the crumbling bricks. The messages were cryptic, words of warning and despair, as if those who wrote them had known something terrible. Sarah's camera flashed, capturing the eerie messages. She could feel the weight of the unseen eyes upon them, the secrets of the past lurking in the shadows. As they moved through the station, the air was filled with the soft sounds of footsteps and whispers, echoes of a time long gone. "There are stories," Mike began, his voice low, "of a train that derailed here many years ago. They say it still roams these tracks, a ghostly echo of its final journey." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Her logical mind told her it was just a story, but the fear in Mike's eyes was real. They continued on, the only light coming from Sarah's camera and the faint moonlight that seeped through the broken roof. Suddenly, a loud screech pierced the silence. They froze, the sound echoing around them like a cry from another world. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she turned slowly. There, on the tracks, stood a train, its ghostly form shimmering in the moonlight, its windows dark and empty. "It can't be," she gasped, her camera raised in trembling hands. But as she looked through the lens, the train vanished, leaving nothing but the cold, empty tracks. Mike's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave," he said, his voice barely a whisper. But Sarah was rooted to the spot, her curiosity battling her fear. She had to know the truth, to uncover the secrets of this haunted place. As they turned to leave, a figure appeared before them. It was a woman, her face twisted in anguish, her eyes pleading for help. Sarah's camera flashed, capturing the ghostly image, but when the light faded, the woman was gone. Mike grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her towards the exit. "We're not alone," he said, his voice trembling. "This place is cursed." They ran through the station, the sounds of the past chasing them, whispers and cries filling the air. Sarah's camera flashed again and again, each photo revealing glimpses of the unseen, the souls trapped within the walls of the station. As they reached the exit, Mike stopped, his face stricken with grief. "My grandfather," he said, his voice breaking. "He was the conductor of that train. I've always felt his presence here, his regret." Sarah looked at him, her own fear replaced by empathy. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "We don't have to stay." But Mike shook his head. "No, we need to face this, to give them peace." They turned back, walking towards the heart of the station. The air grew heavier, the whispers louder, but they pushed on, determined to uncover the truth. As they reached the platform where the train had once stood, the air suddenly grew still. The whispers stopped, and a light appeared on the tracks. It was the train, its form solid and real, the windows glowing with a soft light. Mike stepped forward, his eyes filled with tears. "I'm here, grandfather," he called out. "I've come to set you free." The train's doors opened, and a figure stepped out. It was an old man, his face kind and gentle. He looked at Mike, a smile spreading across his face. "Thank you," he said, his voice echoing around them. "You've freed us all." With those words, the train and the old man vanished, leaving behind a sense of peace and closure. Sarah lowered her camera, tears in her eyes. They had faced the haunting of the abandoned station, and in doing so, they had set the past to rest. As they walked back into the night, Sarah knew that this was a story she would never forget, a tale of curiosity, fear, and ultimately, redemption. The station might have been abandoned, but its stories would live on, whispers in the night, echoes of a time gone by. Lost in the mountains' shadow, Emily, with her confident stride and keen eyes, led the way through the dense foliage of the mountain pass, her backpack full of essentials swinging gently with each step. David, less accustomed to the rugged outdoors, followed closely behind, his gaze alternating between the treacherous path and the breathtaking views. The mountains were known for their beauty and their treachery, a fact that Emily, a seasoned hiker, knew all too well. David, on the other hand, was new to this. He had joined Emily on this adventure to escape the monotony of city life, craving the thrill of nature. The remote mountain pass, with its winding trails and towering peaks, seemed like the perfect escape. As they ascended, the weather began to change. What started as a clear, sunny day soon turned into a blanket of fog that enveloped the mountains, obscuring their path. Emily checked her compass and the old map she'd found in a local shop, its edges worn and its lines faded. "We should be near the summit by now," she said, her voice laced with uncertainty. But as they continued, it became clear that they were lost. The trail, once marked by clear signs, had disappeared, replaced by a dense, uncharted wilderness. The fog grew thicker, and a chilling wind whispered through the trees. "That's not on the map," David said, pointing to a narrow, almost hidden path that veered off to the right. Emily hesitated, but with no other options, they decided to follow it. As they moved deeper into the unknown, the atmosphere changed. The trees seemed to close in on them, and the air was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant sound of an animal, or perhaps something else. It was then that they saw the figure. It stood at a distance, shrouded in the mist, its form barely visible. Emily called out, but there was no response. The figure seemed to beckon them, leading them further into the depths of the mountains. "Are you sure we should follow it?" David asked, his voice tinged with fear. But Emily, driven by a mixture of curiosity and a desperate need to find a way out, pressed on. As they followed, the figure remained always just out of reach, leading them deeper and deeper into the wilderness. The weather grew worse, the wind howling like the cries of some ancient creature. The legends of the mountains, once just stories told by the locals, now seemed all too real. They spoke of spirits and curses, of travelers who ventured too deep and never returned. "We need to go back," David said, panic rising in his voice. But when they turned, the path they had followed was gone, swallowed by the fog in the forest. They were truly lost, with nothing but the mysterious figure to guide them. Night began to fall, and with it came a sense of impending doom. The temperature dropped, and the fog seemed to grow thicker, obscuring the stars and the moon. Hours passed, and exhaustion began to set in. They had no choice but to stop and rest, huddled together for warmth. The figure had disappeared, leaving them alone in the vast, unforgiving wilderness. As they sat, the silence of the night was broken by a faint, haunting melody. It seemed to come from all around them, a song of sorrow and longing that echoed off the mountains. Emily thought of the legends, of the spirits said to roam these peaks, mourning their fate. "We're not alone," David whispered, his eyes wide with fear. Emily didn't respond. She knew they were in the heart of the mountains now, in a place where the line between reality and superstition blurred. Morning came, but with it no relief. The fog lingered, and the path remained hidden. They decided to move, driven by a desperate hope of finding a way out. As they walked, the melody followed them, a constant reminder of their predicament. The figure reappeared, leading them further still. They had no choice but to follow, their bodies weary, their spirits broken. Finally, as the sun reached its peak, the fog began to lift. The figure stopped, pointing to a clearing in the distance. With the last of their strength, they moved towards it. There, in the clearing, lay the ruins of an old village, its buildings crumbling and overgrown. The figure vanished as they approached, leaving them alone in the silent ruins. Emily and David explored the village, finding remnants of a life long gone. The melody had stopped, replaced by a heavy silence. It was as if the village was holding its breath, waiting. In the center of the village, they found a stone altar, its surface covered in ancient symbols. As Emily approached, the air grew cold, and a sense of dread filled her heart. She looked at David, her eyes filled with fear. "We need to leave now." But as they turned to go, the fog returned, thicker than ever. The melody began again, louder, more insistent. They ran, but the village seemed to change around them, the buildings shifting, the paths twisting. The melody grew into a cacophony, a symphony of sorrow that filled the air. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The fog lifted, and they found themselves on the familiar trail, the one they had lost days ago. They didn't stop to question their luck. They followed the trail, finally emerging from the wilderness back into the world they knew. As they looked back at the mountains, now calm and beautiful in the light of the setting sun, Emily knew they had experienced something beyond understanding, something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The mountains had shown them their power, their indifference. They had been lost in the shadow of the mountain, and though they had returned, a part of them would always remain there, caught in the melody of the ancient, forgotten village. Echoes of the Seaside Hotel. The Seaside Hotel, once a gem along the coast, now stood as a relic of the past, its walls worn by the salty air and the relentless passage of time. Anna, a writer with a passion for the mysterious and the unexplored, couldn't resist the allure of such a place. It was the perfect setting for her new novel, a story woven from the threads of Gothic horror. Lucas, the enigmatic owner of the hotel, welcomed her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His demeanor was as mysterious as the hotel itself, with a presence that spoke of untold stories and hidden truths. Anna couldn't help but feel there was more to Lucas and the hotel than met the eye. The hotel's interior was a labyrinth of corridors and rooms, each telling a story of decades past. The air was heavy with a sense of decay and the persistent echo of waves crashing against the shore. At night, the corridors were lit by flickering lights that cast long, ominous shadows. Anna's room overlooked the churning sea, the sound of the waves a constant companion in the stillness of the night. But it wasn't long before the tranquility of the setting gave way to an unsettling feeling. On her first night, Anna was plagued by vivid nightmares, a jumble of images and sounds that felt all too real. Whispering voices, the creaking of old floorboards, and the sight of ghostly figures wandering the halls filled her dreams. She woke up to the sound of the sea, the morning light doing little to dispel the unease that had settled in her heart. As she explored the hotel, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The portraits on the walls seemed to follow her with their eyes, and the air was thick with the scent of salt and something else, something unidentifiable. In the library, Anna found a hidden diary, its pages yellowed with age. The diary belonged to a previous owner of the hotel, and as she read, a chilling story unfolded. The entries spoke of sorrow and madness, of guests who vanished without a trace, and of a room that was kept locked at all times. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, Anna sought out the locked room. Lucas found her in the corridor, his expression one of concern, or was it fear? Some things are better left alone, he warned, but Anna's resolve only strengthened. That night, the nightmares returned with a vengeance. The ghostly guests from the past roamed the corridors, their whispers filling her ears. In her dream, she found herself standing before the locked room, its door creaking open to reveal the darkness within. Anna awoke with a start, her heart racing. She knew she had to uncover the truth about the hotel, about the room, and about Lucas. Her investigation led her to the heart of the hotel's dark history. The room had been the site of a tragic event, one that had left an indelible mark on the hotel and its inhabitants. Lucas finally revealed his connection to the hotel. He had been there on the night of the tragedy, a witness to the events that had unfolded in the locked room. The hotel, he explained, was a place where the past never truly died, where the echoes of old sorrows lingered in the air. Determined to put an end to the hotel's haunting, Anna decided to confront the past. She convinced Lucas to open the locked room, revealing a space frozen in time, untouched since that fateful night. As they stood in the room, the air grew colder and the whispers grew louder. The ghosts of the past emerged from the shadows, their faces twisted in anguish. Anna and Lucas found themselves reliving the events of that night, caught in a loop of sorrow and madness. With every ounce of her will, Anna broke free from the visions, her voice a beacon in the darkness. She spoke words of release, of forgiveness, a plea to the restless spirits to find peace. The hotel trembled as if releasing a long-held breath. The spirits faded away, their whispers dying in the air. The room, once a prison of the past, was now just a room, empty and silent. In the days that followed, the Seaside Hotel seemed to breathe easier, its walls no longer heavy with the weight of its history. Anna finished her novel, the story enriched by the truths she had uncovered. As she prepared to leave, she looked back at the hotel, its facade now a little less foreboding. Lucas stood at the door, a genuine smile on his face. The hotel would continue to stand, a testament to the past, but no longer a prisoner to it. Anna left the Seaside Hotel with a newfound understanding of the duality of human nature, of the thin line between reality and the echoes of the past. The hotel, with its ghostly guests and its locked room, would remain in her Part, a reminder of the journey into the depths of Gothic horror and the power of facing one's fears. Island of the Unseen. The sun was setting as Leo and Mia stumbled onto the deserted island, their lifeboat washing ashore after the harrowing shipwreck. The island, a mix of dense jungle and sandy beaches, seemed untouched by humanity. But as they ventured further, a chilling sensation crept over them. They couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. Their first night was filled with unsettling sounds from the jungle. Branches snapping, leaves rustling, and distant animal cries. They built a makeshift shelter by the beach, hoping for some semblance of safety. But as they tried to sleep, they heard something moving outside, something that wasn't just the wind. The next morning, they decided to explore the island, searching for food and perhaps a way to signal for help. The island was eerily quiet in the daylight, but the sense of being watched persisted. As they moved through the thick underbrush, they stumbled upon something unexpected: remnants of previous castaways, tattered clothes, a rusted knife, and a diary with pages torn out. It was clear they were not the first to find themselves stranded here, but it was the trees that held the most disturbing discovery. Carved into the bark were strange symbols, none that they recognized. The symbols seemed to form a pattern, leading deeper into the island. Despite their apprehension, curiosity drove them to follow the trail. As they delved further into the jungle, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The air was heavy, and the feeling of being watched intensified. Mia started to see shadows flitting between the trees, too quick to be just animals. Leo tried to reassure her, but the fear in his own eyes was unmistakable. Their journey led them to a clearing, where the symbols converged. In the center stood an ancient statue, its features eroded by time. The ground around it was littered with offerings, bones, stones, and more unsettlingly, personal items that looked like they belonged to the previous castaways. It was then that they felt it, a presence, malignant and intense, watching them from the shadows. They backed away slowly, but as they turned to leave, they heard a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from all directions. Panic set in as they ran back to their shelter, the sounds of pursuit echoing through the jungle. They barely made it back, breathless and terrified. That night, the noises outside their shelter were more aggressive, more purposeful. The next few days were a blur of fear and desperation. They tried to signal for help, lighting fires and creating makeshift signs on the beach, but it was as if the island itself was against them. The fires would inexplicably go out, and their signs were destroyed by the time they returned to them. The eerie animal behavior escalated. Birds would suddenly go silent, and they would find small animals dead without any apparent cause. Their shelter was tampered with every night, the entrance blocked or the supports weakened. Leo and Mia realized they were not merely stranded. They were being stalked by something unseen, something that didn't want them to leave the island. The paranoia consumed them, every sound and movement sending them into a panic. One night, the entity made itself known. Their shelter was violently shaken, the force of it nearly collapsing it on top of them. They heard a sound unlike any animal, a deep, resonant chanting that filled the night air. It was coming from the direction of the clearing. They knew they had to face whatever was haunting them. Armed with only the rusted knife and makeshift spears, they headed to the clearing under the cover of night. The island seemed alive, aware of their intentions, the jungle teeming with unseen eyes. At the clearing, the statue loomed over them, its presence more ominous than ever. The chanting grew louder, and the ground beneath them vibrated with the sound. They could feel the presence closing in, surrounding them. In a moment of desperation, Leo stepped forward, shouting into the darkness, challenging the unseen entity. Mia joined him, her voice a mix of fear and defiance. They stood together, united against the unknown. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the chanting stopped. The presence receded, and the jungle fell silent. They waited, but nothing happened. The statue, once a symbol of fear, now seemed just a piece of stone. As the sun rose, they returned to their shelter, exhausted but alive. The island seemed different in the daylight, less menacing. They continued to signal for rescue, hope slowly returning. Weeks later, they were finally spotted by a passing ship. As they sailed away from the island, they looked back at the dense jungle and the hidden clearing. The island had tested them, its unseen presence a constant threat. They would never know what stalked them or why it finally let them go. But as they left the island of the unseen behind, they carried with them a newfound strength, a resilience forged in the face of the unknown. The experience would haunt them, but it would also remind them of their will to survive, no matter the odds. Subterranean screams. Carlos and Jenny stood at the entrance of the old subway tunnel, its dark maw yawning before them. They were an unlikely pair. Carlos, the daring urban explorer with a taste for the unknown, and Jenny, a history enthusiast drawn to the stories of the past. Together, they were about to delve into a forgotten chapter of the city's history. The tunnel, abandoned for decades, was a relic of a bygone era. Its tracks, once bustling with the life of the city, now lay silent and unused. The air was thick with the musty scent of damp and decay, and their flashlights barely penetrated the gloom. As they ventured deeper, the tunnel seemed to constrict around them, the walls pressing in with a weight of years. The only sounds were their footsteps and the distant, eerie drip of water. Carlos's excitement was palpable, his eyes shining in the flashlight's beam. Jenny, however, felt a growing sense of unease. It was as if the tunnel didn't want them there. Their first discovery was a collection of old newspaper clippings, yellowed with age and damp. They told of the tunnel's closure, of accidents and unexplained incidents that had plagued it in its final day. Jenny felt a shiver run down her spine as she read them. There was more to this place than just forgotten history. Deeper into the tunnel, they found a lost train car, its paint peeling, its windows broken and dark. It was a ghost of its former self, a remnant of a time when the tunnel was alive with the sound of travel and life. As they approached, a cold wind blew through the tunnel, carrying with it the faint sound of voices and laughter, echoes of the past that seemed almost real. Inside the train car, the air was even colder, a chill that seemed to seep into their bones. The seats were covered in a thick layer of dust, and cobwebs hung in the corners. As they explored, Jenny thought she saw movement out of the corner of her eye, a fleeting glimpse of something not quite there. Then they heard it, a scream, distant and muffled, as if coming from deep within the earth. It was followed by others, a chorus of cries that filled the tunnel, reverberating off the walls. Carlos and Jenny froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. "It's just the wind," Carlos said, but his voice betrayed his fear. They decided to head back, but as they turned to leave, the train car lurched, as if something had struck it. They stumbled, disoriented, and when they looked up, they saw them, spectral figures, passengers from a different time, their faces twisted in expressions of fear and despair. Carlos and Jenny ran, their footsteps echoing in the empty tunnel. The screams followed them, a constant reminder of the horrors they had awakened. As they neared the entrance, the tunnel began to collapse, the walls crumbling, the ceiling falling in pieces around them. They made it out just in time, the entrance collapsing behind them, sealing the tunnel and its ghosts once again in the darkness. They lay on the ground, gasping for breath, their hearts racing with adrenaline and fear. As they looked back at the sealed entrance, they knew they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than they could imagine. The tunnel had been more than just a forgotten place. It had been a tomb, a resting place for the echoes of the past. Carlos and Jenny never spoke of what they saw in the tunnel, but it stayed with them, a haunting memory of the day they delved too deep into the forgotten corners of the world. They had heard the subterranean screams, and they knew that some places were meant to remain undisturbed, their secrets buried in the darkness. Subterranean screams. Carlos and Jenny stood at the entrance of the old subway tunnel, its dark maw yawning before them. They were an unlikely pair. Carlos, the daring urban explorer with a taste for the unknown, and Jenny, a history enthusiast drawn to the stories of the past. Together, they were about to delve into a forgotten chapter of the city's history. The tunnel, abandoned for decades, was a relic of a bygone era. Its tracks, once bustling with the life of the city, now lay silent and unused. The air was thick with the musty scent of damp and decay, and their flashlights barely penetrated the gloom. As they ventured deeper, the tunnel seemed to constrict around them, the walls pressing in with a weight of years. The only sounds were their footsteps and the distant, eerie drip of water. Carlos's excitement was palpable, his eyes shining in the flashlight's beam. Jenny, however, felt a growing sense of unease. It was as if the tunnel didn't want them there. Their first discovery was a collection of old newspaper clippings, yellowed with age and damp. They told of the tunnel's closure, of accidents and unexplained incidents that had plagued it in its final day. Jenny felt a shiver run down her spine as she read them. There was more to this place than just forgotten history. Deeper into the tunnel, they found a lost train car, its paint peeling, its windows broken and dark. It was a ghost of its former self, a remnant of a time when the tunnel was alive with the sound of travel and life. As they approached, a cold wind blew through the tunnel, carrying with it the faint sound of voices and laughter, echoes of the past that seemed almost real. Inside the train car, the air was even colder, a chill that seemed to seep into their bones. The seats were covered in a thick layer of dust, and cobwebs hung in the corners. As they explored, Jenny thought she saw movement out of the corner of her eye, a fleeting glimpse of something not quite there. Then they heard it, a scream, distant and muffled, as if coming from deep within the earth. It was followed by others, a chorus of cries that filled the tunnel, reverberating off the walls. Carlos and Jenny froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. "It's just the wind," Carlos said, but his voice betrayed his fear. They decided to head back, but as they turned to leave, the train car lurched, as if something had struck it. They stumbled, disoriented, and when they looked up, they saw them, spectral figures, passengers from a different time, their faces twisted in expressions of fear and despair. Carlos and Jenny ran, their footsteps echoing in the empty tunnel. The screams followed them, a constant reminder of the horrors they had awakened. As they neared the entrance, the tunnel began to collapse, the walls crumbling, the ceiling falling in pieces around them. They made it out just in time, the entrance collapsing behind them, sealing the tunnel and its ghosts once again in the darkness. They lay on the ground, gasping for breath, their hearts racing with adrenaline and fear. As they looked back at the sealed entrance, they knew they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than they could imagine. The tunnel had been more than just a forgotten place. It had been a tomb, a resting place for the echoes of the past. Carlos and Jenny never spoke of what they saw in the tunnel, but it stayed with them, a haunting memory of the day they delved too deep into the forgotten corners of the world. They had heard the subterranean screams, and they knew that some places were meant to remain undisturbed, their secrets buried in the darkness. The village dark secret. Nora had always been drawn to the hidden corners of the world, the places where secrets lingered like fog. As a journalist, she had uncovered truths that lay buried under layers of silence and fear. Her latest assignment brought her to a small, rural village tucked away in a forgotten valley. It was a picturesque place, with quaint houses and flowering meadows, but beneath its idyllic surface, something darker lurked. The villagers were polite but distant, their smiles strained, their eyes shadowed with something unspoken. Nora could feel their wariness, the way they watched her from behind curtained windows. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense of something untold, something hidden. Her investigation began at the local inn, where she heard whispers of disappearances, villagers who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind empty homes and unanswered questions. The more she asked, the more the villagers closed in on themselves, their words a mix of warnings and evasions. Nora's curiosity led her to the village's edge, where an ancient, overgrown path wound its way into the dense forest. There, hidden among the trees, lay an abandoned shrine, its stones covered in moss, its presence almost suffocating. As she explored the shrine, she found strange symbols carved into the stone, symbols that spoke of old rituals and forgotten gods. The air around the shrine was cold, the silence oppressive. It was as if the place itself was holding its breath, waiting. That night, Nora's dreams were filled with visions of shadowy figures moving through the forest, their faces hidden, their hands raised in some ancient rite. She woke with a start, the echo of their chants still ringing in her ears. Determined to uncover the truth, Nora delved deeper into the village's history. She discovered tales of old rituals, of sacrifices made to appease ancient deities, rituals that had been passed down through generations. It seemed the village's idyllic facade was a mask, hiding a darker, more primal reality. The villagers grew more hostile, their distrust turning to outright aggression. Nora knew she was close to uncovering something they were desperate to keep hidden. Her breakthrough came when she met an old woman, the village's outcast, who lived alone at the forest's edge. The woman spoke of a ritual that took place every few years, a ritual that ensured the village's prosperity and peace. It was a ritual of darkness, of sacrifice, and it was due to happen again. Nora's investigation had stirred something in the village, a sense of impending doom. She realized she was no longer just a journalist. She was a threat to their secret, a piece in a game she didn't fully understand. That night, as the moon rose high in the sky, Nora found herself being followed. Shadowy figures moved through the trees, their whispers carried on the wind. She ran, her heart pounding, her mind racing with fear. The chase led her back to the shrine, where the villagers had gathered, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of torches. They were no longer the polite, distant people she had met. They were transformed, their eyes filled with fervor, their voices raised in a chant that chilled her to the bone. Nora realized the truth then. The ritual was not just a relic of the past. It was alive, a part of the village's very soul. She had uncovered their dark secret, but at what cost? The villagers closed in, their intentions clear in their eyes. Nora prepared to fight, to scream, to do whatever it took to survive. But as they reached for her, the old woman appeared, her voice cutting through the night. "Enough," she cried, her presence commanding. The villagers stopped, their fervor breaking like a spell. The old woman spoke of change, of letting go of the darkness that had held the village in its grasp for so long. She spoke of a new path, one of light and truth. The villagers listened, their anger fading, replaced by a dawning realization. They had been prisoners of their own history, bound by rituals that no longer held meaning. It was time to let go, to step into the light. Nora left the village the next day, her story written not in the black and white of truth and lies, but in the gray of human nature. The village's dark secret was a reminder of the cost of uncovering the truth, of the shadows that lurk in the heart of every idol. But there was hope too, in the old woman's words, in the possibility of change. The village would never be the same, and neither would Nora. She had looked into the darkness and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more aware of the complexities of the human soul. Labyrinth of the Cursed Forest. Alex, a seasoned park ranger, had seen his fair share of lost hikers in the dense, sprawling forest that bordered the small town. But nothing could have prepared him for the distress call he received that foggy evening. A group of hikers had ventured into the forest and hadn't returned. As night fell, Alex knew he had to act fast. Equipped with his trusty compass, a flashlight, and years of experience, Alex entered the forest. The forest was notorious for its labyrinth of trails, which seemed to twist and turn in impossible ways. Tonight, the forest felt different, more menacing, as if it was alive and watching. As he ventured deeper, the fog thickened, swallowing the weak beam of his flashlight. The trees loomed over him, their branches like gnarled hands reaching out. In the silence, Alex thought he heard whispers, but when he stopped to listen, there was only the sound of his own breath. After what felt like hours, he finally found the group of hikers. They were huddled together, visibly shaken and scared. They spoke of trails that seemed to change, landmarks that appeared and disappeared, and a feeling of being watched. Determined to lead them out, Alex took the lead, his compass in hand. But as they walked, it became clear that the forest was not going to let them leave easily. The compass spun wildly, its usual reliability gone. The trails seemed to shift before their eyes, leading them in circles. Panic began to set in, both for Alex and the hikers. The forest felt like a predator, toying with its prey. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that seemed to come from the very trees themselves. In the flashes of his flashlight, Alex saw faces in the bark, twisted and grotesque, their eyes following their every move. It was then that they saw it. An otherworldly creature, part shadow, part mist. It moved between the trees, its form barely discernible, its presence filling them with dread. The hikers screamed, and Alex felt a chill run down his spine. This was no ordinary forest, and they were not alone. The creature seemed to herd them, guiding them deeper into the forest. Alex realized that their only chance was to outsmart it, to find a way through the labyrinth that was both physical and mental. He urged the hikers to stay close, to focus on the sound of his voice, and to ignore the whispers that sought to disorient them. Hours passed, and the forest seemed endless. The creature was always there, just out of sight, its presence a constant threat. But Alex refused to give up. He remembered an old legend, a story his grandmother had told him about the forest, that it was alive, and that it tested those who entered its domain. With a newfound determination, Alex led the group, relying on instinct more than his now useless compass. He spoke words of encouragement, trying to keep the hikers calm. They depended on him, and he would not let them down. Finally, as the first light of dawn broke through the canopy, they saw it, the edge of the forest. The creature let out a wail, a sound of defeat, and vanished into the mist. They emerged from the forest, exhausted but alive. The town's search party was waiting for them, relief and joy on their faces. Alex looked back at the forest, its trees now just ordinary wood and leaves in the light of day. But he knew better. He had seen the true face of the forest, the labyrinth that was both a physical place and a test of one's will. He had faced the creature of the shadows and had come out victorious. The hikers thanked him, calling him a hero. But Alex knew that it was not just him. It was the strength they had found together, the courage to face the unknown and the determination to keep going, even when all seemed lost. The labyrinth of the cursed forest would remain, a place of mystery and fear. But for those who had survived its trials, it was a reminder of their strength, of the power of the human spirit in the face of the unknown. Whispers of the Deserted City. Laura, an intrepid archaeologist with a passion for uncovering the secrets of the past, stood at the edge of an ancient, abandoned city that time had forgotten. Beside her was Tom, a documentary filmmaker eager to capture the mysteries hidden within the city's crumbling walls. They were about to embark on an adventure that would uncover more than just relics and ruins. The city, lost to the sands for centuries, was a labyrinth of stone and secrets. As they ventured through its deserted streets, Laura's excitement was palpable. She marveled at the cryptic hieroglyphs that adorned the walls, speaking of a civilization long gone. Tom filmed every step, his camera capturing the eerie beauty of the city. The air was heavy with the weight of history, and every stone seemed to whisper tales of the past. But as they delved deeper into the heart of the city, a sense of unease began to grow. They found a mysterious artifact, an ancient relic that hummed with an unseen energy. As Laura examined it, the ground trembled, and a sandstorm erupted from nowhere, engulfing the city in a whirlwind of sand and mystery. When the storm cleared, they found themselves in a part of the city that was previously hidden, its paths revealed by the shifting sands. In this new area, the atmosphere grew more ominous. The hieroglyphs here spoke of a curse, a warning to those who dared to disturb the slumber of the city. Laura's curiosity turned to apprehension. But it was too late. The curse had been awakened. As night fell, the city transformed. Shadows moved in the corners of their eyes, and spectral guardians, phantoms of the city's past, appeared on the streets. They were ethereal and menacing, their eyes glowing with an ancient rage. Tom's camera captured these apparitions, his fascination battling his fear. Laura, realizing the gravity of their situation, knew they needed to find a way to lift the curse. They raced against time, deciphering the cryptic messages that held the key to their salvation. Their search led them to a crypt hidden beneath the city. The inscriptions on its door spoke of a ritual, a way to appease the angered spirits. Inside, they found the remains of the city's ancient rulers, their tombs adorned with jewels and gold. But it was not wealth that would lift the curse. It was respect and understanding. Laura, drawing on her knowledge of ancient cultures, performed a ritual of appeasement, offering respects to the spirits of the past. As she chanted the ancient words, the city trembled, and the spectral guardians converged on the crypt. Tom filmed, his hands shaking, as the phantoms circled around them. The air crackled with energy, and the spirit's anger seemed to reach a crescendo. Then, suddenly, there was silence. The guardians vanished, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The curse was broken. Laura and Tom emerged from the crypt, the first rays of dawn illuminating the city. It was as if a weight had been lifted, the air now clear and free of the whispers that had filled it. As they left the city, Laura reflected on the experience. They had awakened a past that was meant to remain hidden, but in doing so, they had also respected and honored it. The city, with its whispered secrets and spectral guardians, was a reminder of the past's influence on the present and the dangers of disturbing what was meant to remain undisturbed. Tom's documentary would tell the story of their adventure, of the whispers of the deserted city. But for Laura, it was more than just an exploration. It was a journey into the heart of history, a reminder of the respect and understanding that the past deserved. The city returned to its slumber, its secrets once again hidden beneath the sands. But its whispers would linger in Laura's mind, a haunting melody of a time long gone but never truly forgotten. Nightmare at the Crossroads Inn. Rachel, a weary traveler after a long day's journey, found solace in the sight of the Crossroads Inn, its quaint facade promising rest and warmth. The inn, nestled at the junction of two old country roads, seemed to beckon her in with its cozy charm. Upon entering, she was greeted by Mr. Simmons, the innkeeper. His smile was polite, yet his eyes held a glint of something Rachel couldn't quite place. He handed her the key to her room, his fingers lingering a moment too long over hers. The room was charming, with antique furnishings and a large, comfortable bed. But as Rachel settled in, she noticed oddities: a clock on the wall that ran backward, and mirrors that seemed to flicker with shadows just at the edge of her vision. Exhausted, she decided to rest. But sleep eluded her. The inn, so inviting from the outside, now felt suffocating. The walls seemed to close in, and the air grew heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. In the middle of the night, Rachel was jolted awake by the sound of whispers. She sat up, her heart pounding, and saw ghostly apparitions reflected in the room's mirror. They were fleeting glimpses of people, their faces twisted in fear and despair. Frightened, she ran out of her room, only to find the hallway transformed. The once charming inn was now a labyrinth of dark, twisting corridors. She could hear soft, disorienting whispers and the backward ticking of the clock, as if time itself was being unraveled. Rachel realized she was trapped in a nightmarish loop. The inn changed around her, rooms and hallways shifting in impossible ways. She saw Mr. Simmons occasionally, his figure flickering at the end of hallways, always out of reach, always watching. As dawn approached, Rachel found herself back in her room, as if the night's horrors had been just a dream. But the backward clock and the flickering mirrors told her otherwise. She confronted Mr. Simmons, demanding answers. His demeanor changed then, the polite innkeeper replaced by a man with a dark, twisted smile. He revealed the truth: the inn was cursed, a prison for those who stumbled upon it. The guests, trapped in time loops, were doomed to relive their nightmares each night. Rachel refused to accept this fate. She remembered an ancient book she had seen in the lounge, its pages filled with cryptic warnings and spells. She realized that the book held the key to breaking the curse. As night fell again, the inn transformed, and Rachel was thrust back into the nightmare. This time, however, she was prepared. She navigated the shifting corridors, her mind focused on the book. She found it, hidden away in a secret compartment in the lounge. The book was old and bound in leather, its pages yellowed with age. It spoke of the inn's history, of a pact made with dark forces long ago by an ancestor of Mr. Simmons. The curse was tied to the inn, a trap for lost souls. Rachel found the spell to break the curse, but it required a sacrifice, a part of her own essence. She hesitated, knowing this would forever link her to the inn's twisted history. But the thought of being trapped in endless terror spurred her on. She recited the spell, her voice echoing in the cursed halls of the inn. The apparitions in the mirrors screamed, their faces contorting in agony as the curse lifted. The inn shook, its walls groaning as if in pain. Mr. Simmons appeared, his face twisted in rage. He lunged at Rachel, but she was quicker. She dodged him, and he stumbled into one of the flickering mirrors. With a scream that echoed through the now still halls of the inn, he vanished. As dawn broke, the inn returned to its quaint appearance. But for Rachel, it would never be the same. She had broken the curse, but at a cost. A part of her would always remain there, a remnant of her soul forever entwined with the Crossroads Inn. She left the inn at the first light of day, the backward clock now ticking forward, the mirrors clear. The nightmares would haunt her, but she had survived. The Crossroads Inn remained, its dark history hidden behind a facade of quaint charm, a reminder of the cyclical nature of fate and the illusion of safety. Caverns of the Forgotten. Jack and Eliza, equipped with their headlamps and climbing gear, stood at the entrance of the uncharted caves, ready to unravel the secrets hidden within the earth. Jack, a thrill-seeking caver, had a glint of excitement in his eyes, while Eliza, a geologist, was eager to study the cave's ancient formations. The caverns were a sprawling maze of tunnels and chambers, untouched and unseen by the outside world. As they delved deeper, the light from their headlamps revealed the cave's eerie beauty. Stalactites and stalagmites jutted out like the jaws of some giant beast, and the walls shimmered with bioluminescent organisms, casting an otherworldly glow. The deeper they went, the more alien the world around them seemed. The air was heavy, thick with the weight of the earth above them. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of their footsteps and the occasional drip of water. As they explored, they came across something unexpected. Ancient, undiscovered ruins hidden deep within the caves. Walls adorned with strange symbols and carvings hinted at a lost civilization that had once thrived in these depths. Eliza was fascinated, her geologist's mind racing with theories and questions. But Jack felt a sense of unease growing within him. The caves felt alive, as if they were being watched by unseen eyes. Their exploration took a terrifying turn when they encountered the cave creatures. They were unlike any life form known to man, creatures of the dark, adapted to a life without light. Their eyes glowed in the darkness, and their movements were quick and skittish. Jack and Eliza found themselves in a fight for survival, navigating through the treacherous caverns while evading these bizarre creatures. With each step, the sense of danger grew, the primal fear of the unknown depths gnawing at their minds. As they sought a way out, they heard it, a mysterious echoing voice coming from the heart of the caves. It was melodic yet haunting, a voice that seemed to speak directly to their souls. They followed the voice, drawn by its enigmatic allure. The voice led them to a grand chamber, the heart of the caverns. Here, the bioluminescent glow was brightest, illuminating an ancient altar at the center. The source of the voice was a figure, ethereal and ghostly, an apparition of the civilization that had once dwelled here. The figure spoke of the cave's history, of the people who had once lived in harmony with the darkness. But their greed had led to their downfall, disturbing forces they did not understand. The caves were now a tomb, a reminder of the past's mistakes. Jack and Eliza realized that the creatures were the guardians of these caves, protectors of the forgotten civilization's legacy. They understood that they were intruders, trespassers in a world that was not meant for them. The way out was fraught with danger. Sudden cave-ins blocked their path, and the creatures lurked in the shadows, watching their every move. But Jack and Eliza pushed on, their determination fueled by the desire to see the light of day once more. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged from the caverns, blinking against the brightness of the outside world. They were changed, their experience in the depths a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The caverns of the forgotten remained, a hidden world of darkness and mystery. Jack and Eliza would never forget their journey, a journey that had taken them to the very limits of fear and beyond. They had faced the unknown depths of the earth and had come back with a newfound respect for the mysteries that lay hidden beneath our feet. Title: The Haunting Journey. The train's engine rumbled like a slumbering beast as it sliced through the thick, ghostly fog that hung in the forest like a shroud. Sarah gazed out of the window, her breath leaving fleeting imprints on the cold glass. She had heard the rumors, but she wasn't one to believe in ghost stories. It was just a late-night train journey, she assured herself. The car was nearly empty, save for a few scattered passengers. One of them, however, drew her attention. A man, seated across the aisle, stared out of the window with an expression that sent shivers down her spine. His name was Thomas. As Sarah settled into her seat, she couldn't help but ask, "Are you okay?" Thomas's eyes shifted to meet hers, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of fear before he composed himself and nodded. "Yes, I'm fine. Just lost in thought, you could say." Sarah turned her gaze back to the fog-shrouded landscape outside. The unsettling feeling didn't dissipate. She had chosen this train ride to escape her own thoughts, her own ghosts. Little did she know, it was about to become an eerie journey she would never forget. Hours passed, and Sarah's skepticism slowly gave way to unease. The train began to make strange noises, clattering, whispering, and sighing. She glanced at Thomas, who seemed unfazed, his gaze locked on the shifting shadows beyond the window. "Is this normal for this train?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. Thomas turned to her, his face etched with concern. "No, it's not. You see, this train has a dark history. It's said to be haunted." Sarah chuckled, thinking he was joking. "Haunted? Come on, I don't believe in ghosts." Thomas leaned in closer, his eyes revealing a story that begged to be told. "I didn't believe in them either until I boarded this train. There's something about this forest, something that lures spirits to it. They say that it's the souls of those who have met untimely deaths on these tracks, and they're not at peace." Sarah shivered, her skepticism challenged by the raw emotion in Thomas's voice. She could no longer ignore the eerie feeling that had settled over her. As the night deepened, the train continued to meander through the mist, revealing glimpses of an ancient, overgrown cemetery through the trees. The gravestones stood like silent sentinels, their inscriptions obscured by time and weather. It sent a chill down Sarah's spine. The strange events on the train escalated. The lights flickered ominously, casting unsettling shadows in the compartment. Whispers, too faint to discern, echoed through the corridor outside. And then came the first glimpse of something truly terrifying. A figure, pale and ghostly, appeared at the end of the aisle. Sarah's heart pounded as she watched it glide towards them. Her skepticism had evaporated, replaced by an icy dread. "Thomas, do you see that?" she whispered, her voice quivering. Thomas nodded, his eyes locked onto the approaching apparition. "Yes, I do. It's one of them, the restless souls. As the ghostly figure drew nearer, its hollow eyes met Sarah's. She felt a cold, clammy hand graze her shoulder, and a shiver of terror coursed through her veins. The ghostly passenger passed through her, and she let out a blood-curdling scream. Panic swept through the compartment as other passengers realized the spectral presence. Some cried out, while others cowered in their seats, paralyzed by fear. Sarah and Thomas, however, remained determined to uncover the truth. The train's eerie journey continued, with more apparitions appearing and vanishing like the fog itself. Thomas, now visibly shaken, explained that these souls were trying to communicate, to tell their stories. But their torment made it impossible to discern their messages. As the night drew to a close, the train approached its final destination. Sarah and Thomas found themselves in the last car, where the ghostly presence was strongest. The train came to a screeching halt, and the apparitions congregated around them. The spectral figures reached out, their hands imploring, their eyes pleading. Sarah and Thomas could feel their despair, their longing for release. Amidst the chaos, Thomas finally understood their message, deciphering the names and stories of the lost souls. Suddenly, the air became heavy with an otherworldly energy. The train compartment seemed to warp and twist, and the apparitions grew more desperate. As the train lurched forward, Sarah and Thomas found themselves hurtling into an ethereal abyss. In an instant, the forest and the ghostly train vanished, and the passengers were left in the stillness of the real world. Their journey had reached its end, but the memories of that haunting night would remain with them forever. As they stepped off the train, Sarah and Thomas exchanged a knowing glance, their skepticism replaced by a profound understanding of the supernatural. The haunting journey had tested their beliefs and forever altered the course of their lives. In the end, the train ride wasn't just a simple journey through a fog-covered forest. It was a chilling encounter with the unknown, a revelation of the spirits that lingered in the shadows, and a reminder that some mysteries are better left unexplored. Title: The Abandoned Road. Mia stood on the desolate highway, the fog rolling in like a sinister omen. She had lost track of time and distance, her thumb out, hitchhiking through this lonely, moonlit stretch of road. Her destination seemed farther away than ever, and her weariness made her desperate. The barren landscape before her held a malevolent silence, a silence that seemed to swallow her pleas for a ride. The night was a shroud of uncertainty, but Mia's desperation overrode her sense of caution. She yearned for the warmth and safety of a vehicle. Just when she thought her luck had run out, the throaty growl of a diesel engine broke the eerie silence. A pair of headlights appeared in the distance, and Mia's heart leaped with hope. The truck approached, its massive form casting an imposing shadow over Mia. It was a monolithic presence on the desolate highway, and as it pulled to a halt beside her, the driver's window lowered to reveal a middle-aged man, his eyes obscured by shadows. "Need a ride, darlin'?" he grumbled, his voice a low growl that matched the truck's engine. Mia hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to walk away, but her desperation compelled her to accept. "Yes, please. I've been waiting for hours." The truck driver leaned over and unlocked the passenger door. "Hop in." As Mia climbed into the cab, a shiver ran down her spine. The interior was in stark contrast to the massive, rumbling machine she had seen from the outside. It was eerily tidy, almost sterile, and devoid of any personal touches. She caught glimpses of strange symbols etched into the dashboard, but she couldn't make them out in the dim light. "Name's Bill," the truck driver offered, his eyes flicking toward her for a moment. His gaze was cold, unsettling. "Mia," she replied cautiously. Bill accelerated, and the highway stretched out before them, dark and unwelcoming. The fog clung to the barren landscape like a sinister embrace, hiding whatever secrets it held. Mia's unease grew with each passing mile, and the silence between them felt suffocating. "What brings you out here, Mia?" Bill finally asked, his voice still low and gruff. "Just trying to get to the next town," Mia replied, trying to sound casual. The road ahead seemed endless, and Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She glanced at the symbols on the dashboard once more, realizing they resembled strange sigils. Her heart raced as she wondered about their significance. As they continued down the lonely highway, strange events unfolded. Unexplained apparitions, fleeting shadows in the fog, appeared at the edge of Mia's vision. Bill, however, seemed unfazed. He drove on, his eyes locked on the road, seemingly indifferent to the bizarre occurrences. Mia's unease grew into sheer terror as the apparitions became more vivid and terrifying. Ghostly figures loomed in front of the truck, their eyes hollow and despairing. Some seemed to reach out for her, and the feeling of their clammy touch sent shivers down her spine. "Bill, do you see them?" she finally asked, her voice quivering. Bill cast a brief, knowing glance at her. "I've seen them many times. It's part of the road." Mia's pulse quickened, and the malevolent atmosphere weighed her down. She realized with horror that she had become part of a nightmarish journey, entangled in the horrors of the desolate highway. She needed to escape, to find a way out. "Stop the truck," Mia cried out, her fears spiking. "I need to get out. Now." Bill ignored her, his foot pressing down on the accelerator. The apparitions outside the window grew more aggressive, their forms becoming more defined and grotesque. Some of them began to reach into the cab, their ghastly hands clawing at Mia. Mia fought to free herself from the spectral hands, her heart pounding with terror. She couldn't bear to become one of them, a lost soul forever bound to this forsaken road. Her mind raced for a way out, and her eyes caught a glint of something sharp on the floor of the truck. With all her strength, Mia seized the object and thrust it toward the driver's side, causing Bill to swerve and lose control of the truck. The massive vehicle careened off the highway and into a ditch, coming to a screeching halt. Mia tumbled out of the cab, her heart racing, and her breath coming in panicked gasps. The apparitions had vanished, and the moonlit highway was empty once more. Mia realized she had narrowly escaped a terrifying fate. She watched as the truck remained immobile, its engine silent. With her heart still pounding, Mia made her way back to the highway. She knew she had to continue her journey on foot, no matter how far it was to the next town. She couldn't stay on that cursed road a moment longer. As she walked away, she looked back at the truck one last time, its engine still silent, its eerie symbols hidden in the darkness. Mia had survived the horrors of the abandoned road, but the memory of that night would haunt her for the rest of her days. The moon cast a pale light on her path, and she quickened her pace, determined to leave the malevolent highway behind. She had learned a chilling lesson about the consequences of rash decisions and the horrors that lurk in remote, forgotten places. Mia would carry that knowledge with her, a solemn reminder of the night she narrowly escaped the sinister embrace of the haunted road. Title: The Wandering Inn. As the storm unleashed its fury upon the small, isolated town, Alex and Emily found themselves drenched and disoriented. The winding road had led them to a place they hadn't planned to visit, an inn, seemingly abandoned, hidden away in the heart of the fog-shrouded town. Desperation compelled them to seek shelter, and the inn appeared to be their only refuge. Its time-worn facade was eerie, yet inviting, as if it beckoned them in with secrets and mysteries to unravel. The couple entered, the creaking of the heavy wooden door echoing through the empty hallway. A dim, flickering candle illuminated the inn's neglected interior. Dust-covered furniture and tattered curtains gave the place an aura of melancholy, as if it had been forgotten by time. Their footsteps seemed to resonate through the silence as they ventured deeper into the inn, searching for any signs of life. Their calls for assistance went unanswered, and an unsettling feeling began to settle in the pit of their stomachs. It was as though the inn absorbed their voices, leaving them unheard in the vast emptiness that surrounded them. Finally, a figure appeared at the end of the hallway, an elderly innkeeper, his form shrouded in shadows. His voice quivered as he welcomed the couple, introducing himself as Mr. Hargrove. "You're fortunate to have found this place," he said, his gaze shrouded in a veil of secrecy. "A terrible storm brews outside, and there's no other shelter for miles." Alex and Emily exchanged a hesitant glance but chose to stay, their need for refuge outweighing their unease. The inn's eccentricity only deepened their curiosity. The innkeeper led them to a musty room, its cold stone walls damp from the constant presence of fog. He promised them warmth, a hearty meal, and a good night's rest, reassuring them that the inn was filled with travelers seeking respite from the storm. However, as they made their way to the common dining area, their expectations were shattered. The room was filled with empty chairs, plates of untouched food, and wine glasses filled with cobwebs. A fire flickered in the hearth, but no other guests were to be seen. Mr. Hargrove, though, remained calm and jovial. "Our other guests prefer to keep to themselves. Don't be concerned." Alex and Emily shared their discomfort but had no choice but to take their seats. Their appetite had waned in the shadow of the odd occurrences that surrounded them, but they were determined to find solace from the tempest raging outside. As they dug into their meal, they couldn't help but feel watched. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the creaking floorboards beneath their feet echoed as if other unseen guests moved about. Emily couldn't help but voice her concern. "Mr. Hargrove, we haven't seen any other guests here. Are we truly alone?" The innkeeper's face remained impassive as he replied, "Oh, my dear, you're not alone. You'll see them soon enough." A chill ran down their spines, and a sense of foreboding grew within them. They had to uncover the inn's dark secrets, to understand why it was shrouded in such mystery. That night, as they retired to their room, their curiosity overcame their unease. They decided to explore the inn further while Mr. Hargrove rested. What they discovered would haunt them forever. The inn was a labyrinth of hidden passages, secret doors, and rooms shrouded in darkness. They stumbled upon rooms filled with odd, arcane artifacts and unsettling paintings that seemed to move when their gazes fell upon them. It was in one of these hidden chambers that they found a ledger, dusty and ancient, filled with the names of countless travelers who had sought refuge within the inn. But it was the final entry that sent shivers down their spines, a list of the names of those who had entered but never departed. Terrified, they knew they had to confront the innkeeper and demand answers. The deeper they ventured into the inn's labyrinth, the more supernatural occurrences they encountered. Mirrors showed distorted reflections, revealing the truth behind the inn's cursed history. They saw apparitions of lost souls, their eyes hollow and filled with torment. Their whispers seemed to speak of the inn's dark secrets and its insatiable hunger for souls. Emily and Alex finally confronted Mr. Hargrove, who revealed his true form, a malevolent spirit bound to the inn. He had lured travelers seeking refuge into his web of deception for centuries, using their souls to prolong his own existence. The inn itself was a cursed entity, a living, breathing monster that fed on the despair and fear of its victims. The couple fought to escape, their terror driving them to the edge of their strength. But the inn's supernatural power was overwhelming, its walls shifting and closing in on them. Desperate, they recited an incantation from an old, dusty tome they had discovered, a spell that would bind the inn and its malevolent spirit to the shadows, forever sealing its dark secrets. As they chanted the incantation, the inn trembled, and the apparitions faded into nothingness. Mr. Hargrove's form dissolved into mist, and the ancient ledger crumbled into dust. The inn itself seemed to breathe a final, mournful sigh before it fell silent and still. The storm outside had abated, and the couple emerged from the inn's labyrinth, their faces etched with exhaustion and the horrors they had witnessed. The forsaken inn, once a place of terror, was now nothing more than a crumbling, abandoned structure free from its malevolent curse. As they left the town behind, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of the horrors they had faced, they couldn't help but feel grateful to have escaped the clutches of the wandering inn. It was a night they would never forget, a night that had tested their trust and shown them the true price of seeking refuge in the unknown. Title: The Never-Ending Bus Ride. Jake had lost track of time when he arrived at the unassuming bus stop. The fog hung thick in the air, as though the world had vanished beyond the mist. He'd been waiting for what felt like hours, seeking refuge from his troubles. The bus, when it arrived, was unlike any he had ever seen before. The vehicle stood before him, an ominous silhouette, its windows opaque and its destination sign blank. The air was heavy with an eerie stillness as the door creaked open, and a figure in a tattered uniform beckoned him aboard. The spectral bus driver's gaze held a haunting wisdom, as if he had been on this journey for an eternity. "Tickets, please," the driver murmured, his voice a haunting echo that sent shivers down Jake's spine. Jake handed over his fare, and with a nod, the driver motioned for him to take a seat. The bus's interior was dimly lit, its flickering overhead lights casting strange, elongated shadows on the worn, frayed seats. Jake chose an empty row and settled in, his unease growing as the bus started moving. The fog outside seemed impenetrable, hiding any trace of the world beyond. Jake had never seen fog so thick, so suffocating. He glanced around, searching for fellow passengers, but the bus was empty, save for himself and the spectral driver. There were no stops, no other commuters, and no signs of life. The minutes turned into hours as Jake's apprehension deepened. The bus ride seemed to be endless, the fog outside obscuring any landmarks or signs of civilization. He thought of asking the driver about the duration of the journey, but the words caught in his throat. He couldn't shake the feeling that the driver already knew his question. Time itself seemed to warp within the bus's confines. Jake's watch stopped ticking, and the only sense of time came from the bus's low hum and the continuous motion through the fog. Jake's surroundings became a surreal, disorienting dreamscape. He closed his eyes, hoping to escape the sense of dislocation. When he opened them again, the scene had shifted. The bus was full, its seats occupied by a host of otherworldly passengers. Their features were twisted and grotesque, their eyes hollow and empty. They stared at Jake with an intensity that sent a chill through his very soul. Panicking, he turned to the driver, seeking an explanation, but the spectral figure was unfazed. "Welcome, Jake," the driver whispered, his voice echoing in Jake's mind. "You are not alone in this journey." The bus continued its mysterious route, and Jake felt himself caught in an endless loop. The same scenes and passengers repeated, each time with subtle variations that added to his disorientation. He watched in horror as some passengers disembarked into the fog, vanishing into the void beyond. Jake became a prisoner of the never-ending bus ride, each loop more disorienting than the last. Time lost its meaning as he struggled to make sense of the surreal and haunting reality he had been thrust into. Desperation drove him to confront the spectral driver, demanding answers to the nature of the journey. The driver's response filled Jake with a sense of hopelessness. "This is the bus to nowhere, Jake," the driver intoned. "A purgatory of endless loops, where travelers are trapped in the void between worlds. You are now a passenger, forever adrift." Jake's mind reeled, his sense of reality unraveling as the bus continued its ceaseless journey. His memories faded, and he became one with the spectral passengers, trapped in a cycle of despair and disorientation. As the bus hurtled through the foggy void, Jake felt himself slipping further into the abyss. He watched in horror as his own reflection in the bus's fog-covered windows distorted and twisted, his features contorting into grotesque shapes. Then, a revelation struck him with a terrible force. The passengers, the fog, the spectral driver, they were all reflections of his own fear, guilt, and torment. The bus was a manifestation of his own personal hell, a nightmarish journey through the darkest corners of his soul. Desperation gave way to a realization that he had to break free from the cycle, to confront his own demons and face the darkness within himself. With newfound determination, he reached out to the spectral driver and uttered a single word: "Stop." The bus shuddered, its infinite journey disrupted by Jake's newfound resolve. The fog outside began to dissipate, revealing a glimmer of light in the distance. The spectral passengers in the haunting landscape faded into nothingness. With a final, triumphant effort, Jake forced the bus to a halt. The doors opened, and he stepped out into the blinding light, his torment left behind in the fog. The endless journey had come to an end. Jake found himself standing at a familiar bus stop, the world no longer obscured by the suffocating fog. The spectral bus was nowhere to be seen, and the horrors that had plagued him were but distant memories. He had faced his own inner demons and emerged from the never-ending bus ride, forever changed. As he walked away from the bus stop, his heart heavy with the weight of his experiences, he couldn't help but wonder if the spectral driver had been a reflection of his own fears and guilt, a manifestation of his own personal hell. The never-ending bus ride had been a journey through the darkest corners of his soul, a surreal and disorienting exploration of the fear of being lost in the void. Title: The Mysterious Train Station. The relentless downpour had left Lucy drenched and shivering, her hair plastered to her face as she stumbled upon the eerie train station. The storm raged on, casting long, twisted shadows through the station's shattered windows and crumbling structure. She had no recollection of how she had arrived here, lost in an unfamiliar place that felt like a forgotten relic from another era. The station was barren, with no sign of life or the comfort of shelter, except for a dim, flickering bulb that barely illuminated the cavernous space. As Lucy took refuge from the storm, she couldn't help but feel a creeping unease. The atmosphere was heavy with an uncanny silence, broken only by the howling wind and the relentless rain drumming against the roof. Her footsteps echoed eerily on the rain-soaked platform. Just as she considered venturing back into the storm, a voice broke the silence. "Good evening, miss." Startled, Lucy spun around to find a spectral figure standing on the platform, his form flickering like a distant memory. He was dressed in the attire of a station master from a bygone era, his face etched with an eerie serenity. "Are you lost, miss?" the spectral figure inquired. Lucy's voice trembled as she replied, I don't know how I got here. I just need shelter from the storm." The spectral station master nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "This place has a way of drawing in those who are lost. You see, it's not just a station, it's a repository of memories." Lucy's curiosity was piqued, and her apprehension began to ebb. She took a hesitant step toward the spectral figure, her eyes searching the dimly lit station. What happened here? Why is this place so haunting? The station master's spectral gaze turned distant as he began to recount the station's history. It had once been a bustling hub, where passengers embarked on journeys filled with hope, dreams, and adventures. But the station had seen its share of tragedy, too, as many travelers never returned. As he spoke, the station seemed to come to life. Flickering lights in the distance hinted at the approach of an ethereal train, its wheels clacking against the rails, and its ghostly passengers disembarking, their faces etched with sadness and despair. Lucy watched in awe as the ghostly train came to a halt, its spectral passengers departing one by one. The station master explained that they were lost souls, bound to the station by their unfinished business and the memories of their journeys. The train's passengers had been trapped in a never-ending cycle, reliving their fateful journeys each night, searching for something they had lost. The station itself had become a liminal space, a bridge between the living and the dead. Lucy was drawn deeper into the station's haunting history. Unable to resist the allure of the past, she soon realized that her own memories were fading, replaced by those of the spectral passengers. Their stories and sorrows became her own, and she found herself reliving moments from their lives. The spectral station master urged her to confront the memories and fears that had brought her here, to break free from the endless cycle of the station. He guided her through the haunting recollections of the passengers, helping her uncover the truth about their journeys and the secrets that bound them to the station. As she delved deeper into the past, Lucy's connection with the spectral passengers grew stronger. She began to understand the power of memories, the weight of unfulfilled dreams, and the torment of being lost in the in-between. Together with the spectral station master, Lucy embarked on a journey to help the lost souls find closure, to confront their fears and regrets. With each memory she confronted, each haunting moment she relived, the station's ethereal cycle began to unravel. The station's once pervasive gloom began to dissipate as the lost passengers found their way home, their journeys finally reaching their long-awaited conclusions. The station master's form grew fainter as he, too, found solace in the resolution of his own unfinished business. With a final, bittersweet farewell, the spectral station master smiled at Lucy and uttered, "Thank you for helping us find our way, miss." The once ghostly train pulled away from the platform, its passengers finally at peace, their memories forever etched in the station's history. Lucy was left standing alone in the dimly lit station. But her own memories and her sense of self had been restored. As the storm outside began to subside, Lucy walked back into the world, her heart heavy with the experiences of the haunted train station. She had discovered the allure of the past, the power of memories, and the courage to confront her own fears and regrets. The station had been a place of haunting, but it had also been a place of redemption. Lucy had unlocked the secrets of the station, helping the lost souls find their way home, and in doing so, she had found her own way back to the living. The eerie train station, once a liminal space between the living and the dead, had now become a place of solace and resolution. It was a testament to the enduring power of memories, the allure of the past, and the redemption of lost souls. Title: The Forgotten Tunnel. Mark had always been drawn to the forbidden and the forgotten. The world was filled with hidden places, secret corners that called out to his adventurous spirit. And when he heard the chilling legends of the abandoned railway tunnel, he couldn't resist the lure of the unknown. The tunnel was a relic of the past, an eerie, pitch-black void that had been sealed off from the world for decades. Its chilling stories spoke of sinister secrets and malevolent forces that had claimed the lives of those who dared to venture within. It was said that once you entered the tunnel, you'd never return. As Mark stood before the yawning darkness of the tunnel's entrance, a shiver ran down his spine. The night was moonless, and the surrounding woods seemed to recede in fear of what lay beyond. He took a deep breath, his sense of adventure overcoming his unease, and stepped into the abyss. The darkness was absolute, an inky void that swallowed his flashlight's feeble beam. The tunnel's walls were damp, the air heavy with a musty, oppressive odor. His footsteps echoed through the silence, magnified by the narrow space, and the tunnel seemed to stretch into eternity. As Mark ventured deeper into the tunnel, he began to hear faint, echoing whispers that filled the void. The voices seemed to originate from all around him, as if the very walls were speaking. They spoke of long-forgotten horrors, of souls trapped in eternal torment, and of the darkness that lurked within the tunnel's depths. His heart raced, and a growing sense of dread gnawed at his soul. But the further he ventured, the more he felt compelled to explore, to unravel the mysteries that the tunnel held. The legends, he told himself, were nothing more than stories, the product of an overactive imagination. As Mark continued to descend into the bowels of the tunnel, he began to feel a malevolent presence, an unseen force that seemed to encroach upon him. Shadows danced at the edge of his vision, whispering cruel promises and terrible secrets. He was no longer alone in the darkness. The air grew colder, and a sense of claustrophobia descended upon him. The walls of the tunnel seemed to close in, as if the very earth itself sought to imprison him. His flashlight flickered and dimmed, plunging him into darkness. Panic set in as he fumbled to restore the light. Amid the suffocating blackness, Mark's fingers brushed against something cold and clammy. He recoiled in horror as his flashlight's beam revealed a decaying hand, reaching out from the shadows. It was an apparition, its face twisted in anguish, its hollow eyes fixed on him. The specter's voice joined the echoing whispers, its words a chorus of despair and torment. It spoke of the tunnel's sinister past, of those who had perished within its depths, and of the malevolent force that sought to claim Mark's soul. The darkness, it warned, was an insatiable hunger that devoured all who dared to enter. Terrified, Mark fled deeper into the tunnel, the specter's mournful cries echoing in his ears. The malevolent presence pursued him, the very darkness itself clawing at his heels. He knew he was running out of time, that the tunnel's secrets were closing in on him. As he reached the tunnel's farthest depths, Mark stumbled upon a grotesque sight, an ancient, rusted gate that led to a hidden chamber. Its iron bars bore eerie symbols, etched into the metal with malevolent intent. As he peered through the gate, he saw a nightmarish scene within. The chamber held the remains of those who had never escaped the tunnel's grip, their bodies frozen in agony, their souls trapped in eternal torment. The malevolent force had claimed them, and it sought to claim Mark as well. In the chamber's center, a malevolent presence coalesced, a formless darkness that hungered for his soul. It whispered promises of power and knowledge, of the allure of the unknown. It promised to reveal the tunnel's true purpose, but at a horrifying cost. Mark's heart pounded as he realized the truth of the tunnel, the sinister secret hidden within its depths. The malevolent force sought to consume his very being, to add his soul to the chorus of the lost. With a final, desperate act, Mark summoned his remaining strength and uttered a prayer, a plea for salvation. The force recoiled, shrieking in agony, its malevolence shattered by the power of his words. The chamber disintegrated into darkness, the apparitions and the malevolent presence vanished forever. Mark's flashlight flickered back to life, revealing the tunnel's empty depths, free from the malevolence that had haunted it for so long. With a heavy heart and a newfound sense of the horrors that lurked in the darkness, Mark retraced his steps, making his way back to the tunnel's entrance. He had survived the malevolent force that sought to claim his soul, but the experience had left its mark, a chilling reminder of the horror of the unknown. As he stepped out into the night, the tunnel's yawning mouth vanished into the surrounding darkness, a place forever sealed away from the world. Mark had ventured into the forgotten tunnel and returned to the living, forever changed by the encounter with the malevolent force that lurked within. Title: The Sinister Rest Stop. John had been driving for hours on the desolate highway, the monotonous hum of the engine and the never-ending stretch of road lulling him into a state of weary exhaustion. His eyes were heavy, and his mind craved the comfort of rest. He had hoped to find a welcoming rest stop, but what he stumbled upon was anything but ordinary. The rest stop appeared isolated, its neon sign flickering ominously in the distance. As he pulled into the dimly lit parking lot, a sense of unease washed over him. The place was run down, and an eerie silence hung heavy in the air. But it was the family that greeted him that sent shivers down his spine. They seemed like a portrait of bygone times, dressed in outdated, threadbare clothing. Their features were uncanny, their smiles strained and unsettling. The father, mother, and 2 children stood there, their eyes cold and unblinking. "Welcome, weary traveler," the father said with a peculiar courtesy. "You've arrived just in time. We've been expecting you." The family's presence and their unsettling politeness raised alarm bells in John's mind, but he was too tired to question their motives. He nodded in gratitude and followed them to a dimly lit building that served as the rest stop's main office. As he entered the building, John couldn't help but feel the weight of the family's stares upon him. The walls were adorned with faded photographs of travelers who had come before him, their faces filled with a sense of dread. He tried to shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The family offered him food and a place to rest, their hospitality growing increasingly strange. They insisted he join them for dinner, a meal that was both peculiar and unsettling. The food tasted off, and John couldn't bring himself to eat more than a few bites. As the night deepened, the family gathered around him, their eyes locked onto his with a haunting intensity. They began to speak of the rest stop's history, a sinister tale of travelers who had come and never left, of rituals that bound them to the place for eternity. John listened in growing horror, realizing that he had stumbled upon a place that defied reason and logic. He had become part of something far more sinister than he could have imagined. The family revealed their true nature, their forms shifting and contorting into something grotesque and inhuman. They had lured him to the rest stop, bound by a malevolent force that compelled them to seek out weary travelers like him. The malevolent presence that had claimed the rest stop was a dark entity, a force that fed on the souls of those who enter. It had ensnared the family in a web of complacency and malevolence, using them as its agents to lure in unsuspecting victims. The family's ritualistic chants filled the air, their eerie voices blending with the whispers of countless souls trapped within the rest stop. John realized he had fallen into a trap, a place where time and reality twisted and contorted, where the boundaries between the living and the dead had dissolved. With a surge of determination, John fought to break free from the sinister family's grasp. He forced his way out of the rest stop's building, leaving the malevolent entity behind. The night air was cold and refreshing, but he knew he had to put as much distance as possible between himself and the rest stop. As he sped away on the highway, he watched in his rearview mirror as the rest stop receded into the distance. Its neon sign flickered, and the malevolent force within seemed to reach out, trying to pull him back into its grasp. John's heart raced, his thoughts consumed by the horrors he had witnessed. He had escaped the sinister rest stop, but he knew that it would continue to lure in unsuspecting travelers, its malevolent force bound to the desolate highway. The consequences of stopping in the wrong place had become all too real for John. He had trusted appearances, and it had nearly cost him his soul. As he drove into the night, he couldn't shake the feeling that the rest stop's dark history would continue to claim the unsuspecting, its malevolent presence forever lurking in the shadows. Title: The Whispering Woods. Lisa had always been drawn to the enigmatic beauty of the natural world. The untouched wilderness, with its secrets and untold stories, held an allure she couldn't resist. So when she heard of the dense, shadowy forest that locals called the Whispering Woods, she knew she had to explore it, hoping to capture its eerie beauty through her camera lens. As she ventured into the forest, the dense canopy of ancient trees cast an eerie twilight, and the woods were filled with inexplicable sounds. The whispers of leaves and the calls of unseen creatures surrounded her, creating an atmosphere that sent shivers down her spine. She felt like a trespasser in a place where the boundaries between the living and the unseen were blurred. The forest had an unsettling stillness about it. Lisa had expected to find a cacophony of life, but instead, it was as if the woods were holding their breath, as if ancient spirits watched her every move. Yet, her determination to capture the mystique of the Whispering Woods drove her deeper into the heart of the darkness. As she ventured further into the woods, she came across a forest ranger's station, nestled deep within the trees. The ranger, an older man with a weathered face, warned her about the wood's reputation. "These woods are unlike any other," he cautioned, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and reverence. "The Whispering Woods is home to ancient spirits, and they are not to be trifled with. You must be careful where you tread." Lisa nodded, taking his words to heart but determined to continue her exploration. She had already captured some striking images, and the allure of the Whispering Woods was too powerful to resist. As night began to fall, the forest took on a surreal and unsettling quality. Shadows danced in the moonlight, and the whispers of the leaves grew more pronounced. Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that the woods were trying to communicate with her, their voices hushed and mysterious. She set up her camera and began taking long exposure shots of the forest, hoping to capture the ethereal beauty that seemed to emanate from the trees. As her camera clicked, she sensed a presence nearby. A faint, otherworldly whisper filled the air, sending a shiver down her spine. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form shifting and indistinct. It was a spirit, an ancient entity bound to the Whispering Woods. It glided toward her, its eyes filled with a melancholic longing. Lisa's heart raced as she realized she was face to face with the spirit of the forest. The entity reached out, its hand passing through her, and in that moment, she felt a connection to something far older and more powerful than herself. The spirit's whispers grew more pronounced, and Lisa began to understand their meaning. The forest was cursed, a place where the spirits of the land were trapped in a never-ending cycle, seeking to communicate with the living. They yearned to break free from the boundaries that held them. As the night deepened, more spirits emerged from the shadows, their stories and longing filling Lisa's mind. They revealed the curse that had befallen the Whispering Woods, a curse tied to the ancient rituals of a lost civilization that had once thrived within these trees. Lisa knew that she had stumbled upon something extraordinary and inexplicable. The Whispering Woods held a darkness that transcended human understanding, a place where the spirits of the land were bound by the ancient rituals of the past. As the spirits continued to whisper their stories, Lisa realized that she had a role to play in their quest for freedom. She couldn't turn her back on the enigmatic beauty of the forest, nor on the spirits who sought to communicate with the living. With newfound resolve, she made a solemn promise to the spirits, vowing to help them break the curse and find peace. She began to investigate the ancient rituals and to seek out a way to release the spirits from their eternal torment. The Whispering Woods held secrets that defied explanation. But Lisa was determined to uncover the truth and to set the spirits free. She knew that her journey into the heart of the forest had only just begun, and the boundaries of human exploration would be tested as she delved deeper into the ancient mysteries of the Whispering Woods. Titled The Ghostly Shipwreck, Sarah had always been drawn to the mysteries of the past, and the stories of long-forgotten shipwrecks held a particular fascination for her. So, when she received word of a remote, fog-covered island with the remains of a shipwreck, she knew she had to investigate. It was a place where the secrets of history still lingered in the salt-tinged air. As her small boat approached the desolate island, Sarah could see the outlines of the shipwreck rising like a skeletal structure from the sandy shore. The fog that enveloped the island gave it an eerie and otherworldly atmosphere, and the cries of seagulls added to the unsettling ambience. With her camera and excavation tools in hand, Sarah disembarked and made her way towards the shipwreck's remains. The vessel's time-worn wood and rusted metal bore the scars of its watery ordeal. It had been abandoned, left to the mercy of the elements and the relentless passage of time. As she examined the shipwreck, Sarah couldn't help but feel the weight of history pressing down upon her. The ship had met its fate long ago, and its story was etched into its very bones. But what had caused the ship to meet such a tragic end? And why had it been left to rot on this forsaken island? As the day turned to night, the fog thickened, and Sarah was forced to set up camp near the shipwreck. She had uncovered several artifacts that hinted at the ship's past, including tattered journals and faded photographs. But there were gaps in the story, missing pieces that she was determined to uncover. As she settled into her makeshift camp, the island seemed to come alive with unsettling noises. Faint whispers on the wind, the creaking of time-worn wood, and the distant echo of voices. She knew that she was not alone on the island, and the presence of these ghostly echoes sent a chill down her spine. That night, as she lay in her tent, Sarah was visited by a vivid dream. In the dream, she found herself aboard the ship, surrounded by a phantom crew. The spectral figures moved about the vessel, their forms hazy and indistinct, as they carried out their duties with an air of desperation and fear. At the center of it all stood the ship's captain, a figure who seemed more corporeal than the rest. He was a commanding presence, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and sorrow. He pointed towards the ship's bow, his voice carrying an otherworldly weight. "Find the truth," he intoned, his words echoing in the dream. "Uncover the past, and you shall be free." The dream left Sarah shaken, and as she awoke in her tent, she couldn't shake the feeling that it held a message, a plea for her to unravel the ship's tragic history. She knew she had to delve deeper into the mysteries of the shipwreck, for the island's curse seemed to demand it. Over the following days, Sarah continued her exploration of the shipwreck, uncovering more artifacts and uncovering the missing pieces of the ship's story. The ship had been involved in a mutiny, a violent and deadly rebellion that had ultimately led to its demise. As she pieced together the events that had transpired on the ship, she realized that the captain had been the victim of a vengeful crew, betrayed by those he had once trusted. His spirit had remained on the island, unable to find rest, and he had sought out Sarah to uncover the truth and lift the curse that bound him. As she worked tirelessly to unearth the ship's history, Sarah could sense the presence of the captain growing stronger, his spectral form becoming more defined. The otherworldly whispers that had filled the island seemed to intensify, as if the spirits of the crew were watching her every move. With each revelation about the ship's past, the captain's anger and anguish grew more palpable. It was as if he longed for the truth to be exposed, for the consequences of the mutiny to be brought to light. Finally, as Sarah pieced together the final moments of the ship's tragic voyage, the captain appeared before her in all his spectral glory. His eyes held a mix of gratitude and sorrow, and he reached out to touch her with a hand that was both corporeal and ghostly. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice filled with a sense of release. "You have uncovered the truth, and now I can finally find peace." As he spoke those words, a spectral wind swept through the island, carrying with it the echoes of the lost crew. The island seemed to sigh with relief, the fog lifting and the echoes fading into the distance. Sarah had uncovered the ship's history, and in doing so, she had lifted the curse that had bound the captain and his crew to the island. With a heavy heart, Sarah made her way back to her boat, leaving the island behind. The shipwreck, once a place of tragedy and torment, now stood as a testament to the enduring presence of the past. The spirits of the ship's crew had found their peace, and Sarah had played her part in uncovering the truth that had been lost to time. As she sailed away from the remote island, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the experience. She had uncovered the ship's history, and in doing so, she had witnessed the power of the past and the consequences of actions long forgotten. The ghostly shipwreck had left an indelible mark on her, a reminder of the enduring presence of the deceased and the mysteries of history that were waiting to be uncovered. Title: The Cursed Train Ticket. The thunderstorm raged overhead as James stood alone on a dark, deserted railway platform. Rain poured in relentless sheets, and the platform's awning offered little refuge. He was soaked to the bone, and his patience waned as the minutes ticked by, punctuated by the deafening thunder and flashes of lightning. James had been waiting for the train, but it was late, leaving him alone on the platform. He checked his wristwatch impatiently, the hands barely visible in the dim light. He needed to reach his destination, a journey that he had been dreading for years. Just as his hope began to wane, the train's piercing whistle broke through the storm. The engine's headlight pierced the darkness, and the train slowly came to a halt. The conductor stood by the open door, and his eyes seemed to bore into James's soul. He handed James a ticket, a small piece of paper that seemed unremarkable at first glance. But as James took the ticket, a shiver ran down his spine. The paper felt cold and malevolent, as if it held a dark secret. He boarded the train, the carriage nearly empty, and made his way to a seat by the window. As the train pulled away from the platform, James examined the ticket more closely. It bore an unfamiliar symbol, and the writing was in an ancient, indecipherable script. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeply wrong with the ticket, that it held a malevolent power that was beyond his understanding. The rain continued to pour outside, the storm growing more intense as the train sped through the dark, deserted countryside. James was the only passenger in his carriage, and an eerie silence hung heavy in the air. The conductor's eyes seemed to follow him, his gaze unrelenting. James's sense of unease grew as he realized that the train was not following its intended route. The landscape outside the window had become unfamiliar, and the storm seemed to have intensified, the rain lashing at the glass with a malevolent fury. As the train rumbled on, James began to hear whispers, faint and otherworldly. They seemed to come from all around him, their words impossible to discern. It was as if the very air was filled with voices that spoke of secrets and horrors that he could not fathom. The carriage lights flickered, and the passengers around him shifted in their seats, their faces shrouded in darkness. James could feel their presence, their malevolent intent. He realized that the passengers were not of the living but of the dead, souls trapped on the cursed train. The conductor approached, his presence casting a chilling shadow. He reached out for the ticket, and as he did, James realized that it was not the conductor's eyes that pierced his soul but the ticket itself. It held a malevolent power, a curse that had ensnared him. The conductor's voice was a haunting whisper, his words filled with a dark promise. "Your journey is one of reckoning, a journey into the past," he intoned. "You have been chosen to confront the consequences of your choices." The train's passengers shifted in their seats, their ghostly forms revealing their nightmarish appearances. They were the souls of those whom James had wronged in his past, their faces twisted in anguish and torment. They sought retribution, and the ticket had bound him to this cursed voyage. The train hurtled through the storm, and as it did, the passengers' voices grew louder, their accusations more pronounced. They spoke of betrayals and lies, of the pain and suffering that James had caused. The ticket collector's eyes bore into him, his gaze a relentless reminder of the curse that bound him. As James attempted to escape, the train seemed to stretch into infinity, its never-ending corridors and endless carriages a maze of torment. He was trapped in a nightmarish cycle, a place where his past actions had come back to haunt him. The curse of the ticket had brought him face to face with the consequences of his choices, a reckoning that he could not escape. The train's passengers sought revenge, and the ticket collector was the harbinger of their dark judgment. Desperation gripped James as he realized that he had no way to break the curse. He was trapped on the cursed train, bound to confront the ghosts of his past. The storm raged on outside, the rain a relentless torrent, and the train hurtled through the darkness, a vessel of torment and retribution. With each passing moment, the passengers' accusations grew louder, their faces more twisted in anguish. The ticket collector's eyes never left him, a constant reminder of the curse that bound him. As the train plunged deeper into the darkness, James's heart sank. He had made choices in his past that had caused pain and suffering, and now he was paying the price. The curse of the ticket had brought him to a place of reckoning, a place where the consequences of his actions could not be escaped. The train hurtled onward, and the curse of the ticket held him in its unrelenting grip. James had embarked on a journey into the past, a journey of reckoning and retribution, and there was no escape from the haunted train that carried him to his inevitable judgment.